so we don't hear them.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
Good morning, my friends.
Morning.
How's everybody doing?
Morning, Fred.
Good.
Well, that's amazing. Today we're going to talk about the sixes. Bob and Molly. Yes.
Hello.
Come on down. You are here and ready to go. And then Brad, this is a wing. And Stacy, this is a wing. And Teresa, this is your stress number. And I think that's all who's connected to a 6. Who else is connected to a 6? I think that's it in our group. So let's hop in. Oh, and real quick, some housekeeping. Obviously, we'll be off for the holiday, July 4th weekend. That's also the weekend before my surgery, so we'll also be off that following Saturday. So the first 2 weekends in July will be on break.
First 2 weekends, okay.
Yeah, the 4th and I think it's the 11th or something like that. 8, 9, 10, 11, yeah. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, yes. 4th and 11th. 4th and 11th, we're off. Okay? And then we'll only have like two more after that. We'll be finished up by the first weekend in August, if not the week before that, I think.
So we still have 2 more weeks before that break.
Yeah, yep. So then we'll be finished up. And then Yin's guys can go to the world and share your knowledge of information and everything. All right. Who's that called in?
Brandon.
Oh, Brandon.
It's me.
What's up, dude?
Yep. What's up?
Okay, so let's hop in. How's everybody's week been as far as managing yourself and others, your relational awareness and your emotional awareness and your self-awareness? How's that been going?
I would like to hear Brad go first.
I would too.
Bradley, we've talked about this. How's it been going?
It's been going.
Okay.
Lots of ups and downs.
Okay.
I don't know. It's a whirlwind of discussions I've had with people, good and bad.
Okay.
So it gets me into good places and bad places. I think, the most difficult conversations I've had with people are, it can really, I don't know, you just get disappointed in humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I have to be very careful with the Enneagram stuff. Like, as you said, Johnny, like jumping to the healthy 8 and not the unhealthy 8.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's a fine line for me.
Yeah.
So I'm working.
Well, I had a conversation with Molly yesterday, and as people are coming into the newness of understanding how all of their numbers work, as far as growth, stress, wings, etc., main type, first, as you're working on coming into that newness, practice that, which is what you've been doing. And now that you're comfortable being in what that looks like, now work on getting to the healthy side of it, right? So I wouldn't want to push you away from it offhand because you're practicing it and it's new for you and it's a place that you have to get comfortable with. So now that you are comfortable with that, at least from what I've seen, now I think the next step is to work towards the health of that, right? So how do I work to be assertive versus aggressive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the struggle for the 8. We want to stay off of the aggressive side, and we want to stay down the middle of assertiveness, of being direct, firm, and respectful, but not forceful, overbearing, and over the top. So now that you're comfortable with your speaking voice and you're comfortable stepping into uncomfortable situations, and now that you're comfortable in conflict, which was something you shied away from previously, the next step is now, how do I do that well?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
Yeah.
that's where SNAP comes into play. And when you see people, just for instance, utilizing the example you gave, being not gracious and not okay, and saying things that are off the wall and that are not Christ-like and that don't mirror anything within the Bible, your first step is to, number one, come back to that basic care and concern, right, of humanity. We all got to have a basic care and concern. So if I have a basic care and concern, I'm not going to say anything outrageous to the person I'm talking to, because I view them as another person that I'm looking out for, so to speak, right? And as I snap to understand, number one, I'm speaking to another human who deserves my humility, who deserves my love. Then I can temper the words that are coming out of my mouth, which is what I've been working on too with John this week, because that is always going to be a struggle for an 8. As I talked to Brandon this week too, who has now come into his 8ness. That's always going to be a thorn in the side for the 8, is to temper our intensity.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. The aggressiveness versus assertiveness is a fine line. That's kind of what I'm feeling. Just for the group, an example of something I heard this week, someone sent me. To defend their own racist ways, they told me that Jesus is a racist.
I saw that. That was funny. But those are laughable things, right? When we see stuff like that, we're literally, we think about the 4 horsemen, right?
Yeah.
They're being defensive. They're being contemptuous, meaning like, I feel like you're attacking me, so therefore I'm going to say whatever it is that I need to say in order to attack you. So
he fully believed what he said.
he probably did.
Off the rocker.
But it was stemming from one of those 4 horsemen.
Yeah.
So when we know those come into play, like Dr. Chin said, that's when we know we have to take a step back and realize that the communication has stopped at that point. There's a barrier there, right? Exactly. What were you going to say, Jessica?
I was going to say, so like, as far as for growth, like this, so if any of you are unaware of what the subject matter they're talking about, Brad has been very wrapped up in trying to help people see where the racism discussion is important. So he's come into that assertiveness there and has tended to go aggressive at times. But when you said, Joni, that he shied away from confrontation before, I think that Brad is always comfortable, which is indicative of a 5 going to that place when they feel comfortable and strong of going toward an 8. Like when it's something that he feels knowledgeable about and passionate about, like he's willing to go there. He's never, I feel like he is and always has been comfortable in confrontation when it's something he's like super comfortable in. So what are some areas, like how do you take those positive things that you've learned and transfer that to saying, okay, I can do this elsewhere where I'm not as comfortable, learning that I've been like, I've refined the skills of where I've learned that I can be comfortable in confrontation and learn to do it well. How can I do it with things that are important to other people, not just things that are only important to me?
Well, see, that's just it. You won't classify it. It's, I'm comfortable being in conflict, period. So no matter what, it's a practice thing. Exactly. So no matter what's brought to the forefront for you, Brad, even if it's something Jessica brings to you, at that point, you have to treat it the same way. So you can't withdraw and say, oh, I'm not going to participate in that. It's now that you're comfortable understanding that, okay, because really that's what this whole thing is about, and we'll tie it back to marriage. You feel like it's important enough to talk about racial inequality with people who don't care about it, and you feel like it's important enough to bring it to their attention. Jessica has opportunities and things she wants to bring to you, and she feels like it's important enough to bring it to your attention. So essentially, she's doing the same thing you're doing. So just like you want them to be open to hear what you're saying, you have to be open to hearing what she's saying. And it works both ways, otherwise you're just being like that person to her. Does that make sense?
That
Yeah, it's
perfectly said.
it's it's interesting just seeing it now through the scope of the Enneagram because
Yeah.
we're talking about when I'm more comfortable about a subject to go to the 8.
Yeah.
But then as soon as you're talking about a subject I'm uncomfortable with, then I'm falling back to the 5.
That's just
And, and so that's like really something consciously that needs like worked on and thought through
It's working
to
on the
get
how.
out of it's really to get out of the 5-ness of avoidance when
correct.
I'm not in the 8 of comfortable.
Right. And that's that true growth transformation. It's not relying only on my health of a 5 of competency and knowledge. It's I will engage, period, because that's what I should be doing. And I was just reading a podcast or listening to a podcast or something I was reading this week about a 5. 5s take the most risk to be in a relationship because they risk the security that they hold so dear to themselves. So for a 5 to engage in any type of relational awareness, relational participation is truly growth transformation for a 5.
Yeah.
Truly, because it's the literal last thing of letting go of their security of their time, energy, resources in order to hand it over to somebody else. And that's what you have to be thinking through. How do I get there? That's your Mount Pisgah. That's where you're trying to go. How do I get there? And you get there through, for example, grasping onto your 8, that you have those traits to use, because an 8 is going to help you engage, because 8s externalize, 8s move towards other people in order to have that closeness, so to speak. So your practice point for you is continue to engage anyway, no matter what it is. Your point is to stay in the middle lane, not submissive, which is more 5, not aggressive, which is a bully 8, but down the middle of assertiveness, of direct, firm, respectful.
Yeah. It's interesting, just how much more clear this has been lately. Because I definitely feel like the 4 is part of it too, the empathy part.
Yeah.
Like empathy is also driving a lot of this.
Yep.
And then needing to switch over to empathy for those that I am not thinking highly of.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the care. That's the basic care and concern.
Yeah.
That I was talking about. We all gotta have it, because I'm liable to say or do anything to anybody if I don't have basic care and concern for them.
Yeah.
Yep. Anybody else? That was good.
Yes.
Good.
We should continue this talk together another time.
Yeah. So like I was saying, Brandon has came on over to the dark side.
Come on.
So Steph, we have another 8. Woo!
No.
8's for the win.
Welcome. Welcome.
Feels good.
As the chicken
He said feels
roost.
good.
They just keep doing it.
It's cool to see how different those sides can be, though. Like, that really helps you see how the stances are so critical. Like, because Brandon does not look like that. Like, I was really even resistant knowing him as well as I do. Steph, as my brother-in-law, since you didn't know that, then when
I
Molly
don't like to be judged.
when
You're
Molly
judging.
and I were listening to which one was it, Molly? I guess it was the wings too, like having a strong wing 9 and then looking at the different stances. Then it was like, oh, that does make sense, but it does look so different.
Yeah, that and the subtypes.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant, the subtypes.
Yep. So it's
Look who made an appearance. Speaking of my
Brother-in-law.
What's up?
Stephanie, this stranger is invading my house.
I know. See, you're complaining about chickens. You've got people just walking up in your spot.
right.
Hey, Brandon, why are you there? I thought you were on your way here.
Molly said, "Where are
He's
you?"
the bad rooster.
Molly's like,
I'm very confused right now.
very
She
confused.
got her bike or needed to get her bike.
Does he have the kids with him still?
She's where are
Where
my
are my
children?
kids?
He dropped him off the chickens.
Oh God.
Yeah, they're over here. They're watching this.
They're at Steph's.
Yeah, we're gonna have Brandon appearing behind all of us at least sometimes.
I know, right? I thought this would be like a thing.
That would
Like,
be
where's
funny.
Waldo? Where's Brandon?
So funny. Well.
Okay, what are they doing, Brad?
I don't know. Getting Harper's bike. I don't.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, because I'll wait to start the video before she gets back because this one is a good one. I like this one.
We're good.
You guys were talking about like numbers being, like, so my sister and I are both 8s, hardcore, but we're extremely opposites. She's like, if you push her or you make her feel like she's got to, like even coming to visit, if you like hold her accountable, she will back off and you won't see her and she'll shut down and you won't get her to answer the phone or anything. Whereas I could never imagine having that behavior. But so like you said, Jess, it's crazy. Like when you, that's why I guess it's hard to put numbers on people, even if you know them, because they're so,
Right.
yeah, because, like if I could say the aggressive part, she's 100% an 8 all day long, get in your face, tell you shut up. But, and that you're stupid. But the way that we handle things and handle people is the exact opposite. I've got a circle of friends that's 100 deep and I talk to all 100 of them every day except Joni this week. But, but she only has like one person. She only deals with like 2 people and the rest she can't handle it. She's like, no, I can't do people.
And basically
So she
what
has
you're
a strong-
describing is a very unhealthy 8, right? Her wall is
Correct. Yeah.
doesn't trust people that she feels will take advantage of her. She doesn't like doing things just
Yeah.
because you told her to do it. And she's very withdrawn.
Right.
5, which is her number she goes to because that she doesn't know how to be any other way.
Yep.
I mean, so essentially,
Yeah. She's literally like,
unhealthy. Yeah.
yeah, she's literally like, if you call her and you're like, so what time are you going to be here? Because she lives in Cincinnati. She'll be like, I'm not coming. Y'all are stressing me
Don't
out. And she
control me.
literally will not come.
Don't control me.
Right.
Told me.
Right.
Don't control me.
Yep.
What time is it? Don't control my time. I was just asking what.
Right. Like she gets so, you got to be on eggshells because you
I'm
will
gonna
set
kill
her
all
off
your
and you will
eggs
lose
back
her.
there behind you is what I'm gonna do.
I keep muting. Shut up while I'm talking. See?
They listen.
Get me in trouble.
Quit telling them over
Hey,
topic.
Steph, that reminds me of you singing your Marilyn Monroe happy birthday. Shut up, I'm trying. And then you resume
That's
singing right after.
so that's my birthday song.
That was still my favorite.
That was the best happy birthday ever. The interlude of "Shut Up" in the middle, definitely the best. So I realized that. Oh, okay.
No, I was saying you're back. Go ahead.
Okay. I was gonna say I feel like when I think about this moment, I think it was a snap moment, but it was also like a realization moment. And I talked to Molly about this. So 2 things, like when I of course, as a 1, like going over the interview, there were like so many things where I just like kept replaying it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I should have said this different, or I should have said this, or I didn't say this. Or, but I realized that in thinking about 6s as well, and especially having a sister as a 6 and really trying to learn more about that, that there were 2 ways of looking at a same situation and like from a different perspective. But when it comes to security, like we both have that need for emotional security. Like when Jen in your interview was talking about, abandonment or feeling alone, and Molly was saying, like, for her, it's very real to feel like when I'm coming from Molly, like when I'm talking and you just dismiss what I'm saying, it is emotional abandonment. And so she shuts down, and it creates more fear because she feels like she's totally invalidated. And like as a 1, I feel the same way, but I also, instead of feeling fearful, I feel angry because I feel like there's been an something has been, there's an unrighteousness there, right? So there's an infraction in, like, the right thing to do would be to create security in a relationship. And when you ignore what I'm saying and invalidate what I'm saying, it is I feel like there's an unrighteousness, and I also feel emotionally abandoned. So this week I had talked to Molly about taking her girls swimming. And she said, no, you can't take them because Veda, the 2-year-old, is crazy. And like, I know, and she obviously, like, I know she's crazy. I know her. And I'm also extremely responsible and very attentive to Veda, and clearly would never put her in harm's way. Right. So immediately in me, when Molly said, no, you can't take her, I'm like, well, what's wrong with me that I can't take care of her? Like, obviously I wouldn't let her drown. I wouldn't, like, I'm going to be on top of her. But I knew that it wasn't about me. It wasn't like, you're not going to do a good enough job. It was more about Molly's fear of relinquishing. And it's not so much control, but it's like, I know that Molly trusts me, right? So it's not a trust issue, but there's a piece of that 6 that's going to say, I'm not 100% confident that you're going to look at every safety measure that I'm going to look at.
Yeah.
And so for Molly, like, when we were talking about it, she was saying, like, even for herself, she's like, I wouldn't take Veda as her mother by myself to a pool. Like, I know she needs more adult supervision so that there's a tag team, because she's that wild and loves the water and doesn't want you to hold her, but doesn't know how to swim, and she's an 8. So she's like, don't hold me, I'd rather drown.
Let me drown on my own.
Yeah, exactly. So it was really interesting in that, for me, as like a snap moment, because normally I would feel really like, I can't believe you would not trust me enough. But I realized this isn't about you trusting me. It's about the like fear side of like, and then I was able, so I didn't even address it. And instead of saying, you know what, like, I get it, she is wild. And I validated her. And then we talked about it later, not that it was an issue, but I just like recognized it as an Enneagram like moment. And then as we were talking through it, it's when she said, I wouldn't have even taken her by myself, but she didn't say that. But I thought about like my mom, who's a 2, but she can be very unhealthy in it, that she would have just said, Molly, you're being ridiculous. Of course I can take care of her.
Right.
So what that would have done is invalidated Molly's concerns, and then Molly would have just shut down. Yeah. Whereas with me, when I didn't invalidate her and I just said, no, I understand, like, she is crazy. And then later could say, you do know that I would take care of her. And she's like, yeah, I know you would. And I would too, but I wouldn't do it by myself. It just like brought it together to say, if we can have an understanding of people's perspectives and at the same time have a humility and know to snap and then communicate in a way, like, it's not like there was a rift between us, but it was an interesting moment having us both studying the Enneagram to be able to say, this is why it's so important. Like, it helps you to gain an understanding and be able to say, okay, this might not have been real, like for a 6, like we'll talk about, I'm sure today, like, is this even real? But we can help 6s navigate things in a more healthy way when we help them feel secure to be able to express the things that they're fearful of, whether they're real or not, and then support them in saying, what can we do to help, like, what can we do to make these fears settle in you? How can we make you feel more secure? Whether they're real or not, they're going to feel them and their feelings are valid, right? Yeah. Like, what can we do? So next time I could say, hey, do you want to go tag team together and take the girls to the swim? Or do you, like, if you want to take them, I'm available to help you, because I know that that's something that you want or need. So anyway, just kind of like interesting with the 6 and also a snap moment. And
that was good. That was good. We talked a little bit about
your perspective, Mal, do you?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And that's something we'll probably get into. But like you said, when there's not a validation and an understanding, and that's a huge thing for just all people, but for sixes, if we don't come to an understanding, then now you're a person we can't trust.
Yeah.
And it's often for sixes, like you think they're like scared of the world. Really, it's often the people that are closest to them that they have these feelings toward. It's not like a stranger on the street.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's often the people you love the most.
Right.
Because those are the people you feel like you should be able to express those to and should be the safest. And then when you do and they're validated, it feels even more pounded.
Right. Yeah.
This takes me back to whenever we were highly dysfunctional and we first had Harper in 2013 and we went in to see my family, and my brother had taken the car seat out of our car and put it in his truck because he wanted to show us, I think he wanted to take us to show us where they might be building a house or something. And Molly said, "What did you do?" And he's like, I moved the car seat. And she's like, "You cannot do that." And just like completely, because at the time, like, she believed that firemen were the only people that could properly install a car seat. And like, she wouldn't let me do it. She wouldn't let her mom do it. She wouldn't let her dad. Like, nobody could do it. This is rocket science. And my brother having no, like, no, you know, like, he doesn't have, like, not all of us were dysfunctional. And like, so he immediately took offense, and he's just like, "What is her problem?" Like, and then back then, like, I stood up for my brother. I was like, "Molly, you got to apologize to him. Like, you completely yelled at him, or if you didn't, he thinks you yelled at him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you need to say something." She's like, "No, I'm not saying anything." I'm like, "What?" I was like, "He completely thinks you just yelled at him, and he doesn't understand why he couldn't move the car seat." She's like, "I don't care."
Yeah.
It was just like a complete invalidation of her that I did, and then with him as well, because he doesn't understand. It was like a huge misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think that lingers on today, but it lingered on for years. Like, that was like my brother's, like, it's just like, geez, like, okay, I'm just not even gonna ask anymore to do anything. Like,
well, because it was never addressed, right? Yeah, because when we don't, when we don't address things, no matter how small, and you'll even see in the video today, it affects more than just the person on the surface. It affects the person that's on the inside of us.
Yeah.
And that person on the inside of us is what holds on to things. So that's actually even a good segue into the video. I'm going to play the video for us, why we go cold on our partners. But it's also good just in general to understand in relationships, period. Even with other people in our family, whether siblings or parents or any of that. And to that point, Brandon, the tagline at the top, I know you can't see it. Our vulnerable self directs our hearts. Okay, that's what directs us, is our most vulnerable self that's on the inside. So let's take a listen, and then I want to hear your guys' thoughts after this.
The story of the path to coldness in love is well known. We start off full of affection for one another, and then, with time, feelings fade. We start prioritizing work. We check our phones while they're speaking. We don't especially want to hear how their day went. There's a popular surface explanation for this kind of emotional frost, that people naturally get bored of one another in the same way as they get bored with everything else. The gadget that once seemed so amazing, the film they used to love. Going cold is, in this story, simply the unavoidable consequence of familiarity. But there's another explanation, darker at first, but in the end, more hopeful. The loss of interest isn't either natural or inevitable. The boredom is something at once more complicated and more active. It exists because we feel hurt by angry with, or scared of our partner, and because we haven't found a cathartic way to tell ourselves or them about it. Tuning out isn't inevitable, it's a symptom of disavowed emotional distress. It's a way of coping. We're internally numbed, not just a touch bored. This can sound strange. After all, we might have no active sense that our partner has been hurting, angering, or frightening us. The idea appears laughable or extreme. It makes our partners sound like monsters or ourselves like weaklings, neither of which is true. But the self that loves within a relationship is not the normal adult self we know from other zones of our lives. We may mostly be hugely resourceful and resilient, but the person who loves is an infinitely more vulnerable being. We should imagine it like a smaller, younger, more defenseless version of ourselves that lives in our heads and is no tougher and not much wiser than we were as babies, which is when so many of our needs for and ideas about love were formed. It's this vulnerable self that continues to direct our hearts, even if we're 6'2" with a pointy beard. The loving self has a gossamer thin ego. It gets hurt, frightened, and upset with desperate ease. You could deeply distress it by interrupting it during a story it's telling you about the sandwich it had for lunch, by not asking it enough about the little spot it got on its arm yesterday, by preferring a book to cuddling, or being a bit tricky about what channel it should watch on TV. Of course, these are, by ordinary adult standards, tiny slights. But we don't love by adult standards. These small arrows are enough to wound the self that loves to its tender emotional core. Ideally, of course, the small self would at once point out what's happened. It would carefully explain that it had been frustrated and hurt. Its voice would be measured, undefensive, and charming. But mostly, it just stays silent. That's forgivable. It doesn't properly understand what's wrong. It just knows it's in pain and is driven by an instinct to withdraw and protect itself, which translates into behavior that looks pretty cold. If the adult self had to give voice to the loving self's upset, it could sound and feel absurd, which is partly why it doesn't. There can be something especially humiliating in having to say, "I don't feel you took enough interest in the details of my lunch break," or "I'm 45 years old, but not capable of sharing a TV remote control." These truly are small issues for an adult to dwell on, but the parts of us that make themselves vulnerable in love don't obey the ordinary adult rules. The consequence is that the loving self dries up. It doesn't want to have sex. It gets sarcastic and irritable, but it doesn't even know why it's like this. It isn't putting on an act. It's confused. To learn to cope, we need a prominent mutual awareness and forgiveness of this dynamic of sensitivity and distress, and a commitment to decode it when disengagement and indifference descend. We have to create a forum in which so-called minor, love-sapping hurts can safely be aired, without the other dismissing, as they always so easily can, the issues at stake as childish or imagined. The touchiness of the loving self is ridiculous if judged by the more robust standards of the rest of life. But this is not the rest of life. When we've gone cold, we may not truly have lost interest in our partners. We might just need an opportunity to imagine that we are quietly, really rather hurt and furious with them. And we should have access to a safe forum in which our tender but critical feelings can be aired, purged, and understood without risk of humiliation.
That was really good. I feel like I need to listen to that a couple of times.
I can't get past their nose. That was like.
Yeah, it was sort of hard. It was weird to watch, but good explanations.
Better to listen to it than to watch the animations.
Yeah.
What'd
I
you,
like how I talked about.
Good. I didn't miss anything.
what'd you say, Brandon?
I said good. I didn't miss anything then.
Yeah, and not with the pictures, no. What'd you guys get from that?
I like the needing mutual awareness and sensitivity in order for that vulnerable self to be able to basically become more secure, so that where our hearts are going to be directed, that I mean, just like the title itself, the vulnerable self directs our hearts. Like our hearts are directed by that vulnerable self. And in order for the vulnerable self to be able to be secure, what it needs is awareness and sensitivity from your spouse.
Yep.
That way you're not withdrawing, but when you do, recognizing that withdrawal is not because you're not interested, it's because you're hurt. And so addressing the hurt is the root of it, like needing to get to why you're feeling hurt and actually be able to communicate that.
Yep. Yep. What else?
I think that it goes, both ways, in the sense that there's so many situations that have come about over the last couple months, and especially in the last few weeks with Dustin and I, where our old behaviors are really becoming a thing of the past. Yeah. And it's because of thinking through what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and is it real? Like for me, I'm like, am I really mad, or do I just feel pissed off because it didn't go the way I wanted it to?
Exactly.
And so before, I would probably half the time have something really irritating me that was justified, but I would either approach it wrong and attack him and tell him how he is not doing it the way that I think he should, and so it's wrong automatically, and not understanding why he wasn't doing it.
Right.
And then on top of that, approaching him and attacking, and instead of saying, here's what's happening, and so forth. So a real quick example of something that we really worked with this week, which we talked to Dr. Chen about yesterday, it was just an awesome moment, was with Dustin's new business. I've been a business owner for years. Well, I've been in business management for years and now a business owner. And so for me, it's almost a second nature kind of thing to do those processes that take being a business, But with Dustin, he's always been an employee, a supervisor, but still being told what to do and then telling other people. And so one of the things I did this week was I spent time building him a website and business cards and all that, whereas he would have usually blown that off. He was like over the top thankful, but I had asked him to do a couple of things that I needed him to do, and he didn't. And I thought it through, and I'm like, I'm working on my business and your business, and I'm asking you to do two small things, but you're not doing them. That was my instant thought. And then I was like, but are they small? They're small to me.
Right.
But are they small? And then I started to think it through the process.
Yeah.
And then I approached him the right way. And I said, hey, something's bothering me, and I'm so thankful that you're aware of all the things I'm doing and blah, blah, blah. But here's a couple things that I'm struggling with. And I just wanted to hear your why. I want to know your why and what can I do to help you? Right. It was so awesome. He opened right up. There was no pullback. Like,
right.
What are you talking about? I'm fine. Like he usually would be. He was very open and was like, you're right. You did ask me to do those things and they should be pretty easy. I'm a little apprehensive because these customers that you want me to call, they're things I don't know how to do yet. And I'm afraid. And I was just like, oh, wow. Well, what can we do? And we just worked right through it. And it was just like, there was not even a bump in the road. It was beautiful. And so that awareness of each other, it has made us, that boredom that's always there in a relationship after time. It's almost like a new relationship, like I had said a few weeks ago, where I'm like, wow, what can I do to help you? And then he's looking at me, it was really cool.
Nice. Thank you. That's good. That's so good.
That's awesome. And that's huge, like growth for an 8, because you stopped acting out of your gut and you stopped and you thought about it and you thought about how he might feel. So like, that's that huge piece of growth for you. That's awesome.
And you're appreciating him more. Like you see side, like you appreciate the things that maybe he wouldn't have brought up before because he was afraid that you would tear him down for saying, I don't get it. Instead, you were going to support him and show him how. Like, that's awesome.
I don't even think of it that way, girl. That's true. Yeah. It was exciting because he opened up to me. Yeah. And that's not something he does easily.
Because now you've made him feel safe.
Yeah, it was cool because, I didn't even have that feeling in me like, you're stupid, you're not doing things, I didn't even have that. And I had a similar issue, which I won't go into, but with an employee that's gone now. Same thing. Like my initial reaction would have been like, you, let me make you feel stupid. Let me make you feel accountable. Let me let you know that I know everything that you've done. But instead I was just like, nah,
she's struggling. I'm sorry for her. And I hope she really comes out on top wherever she ends up. And I was just like, what?
That's
Who
awesome.
are you?
You're building new pathways, and like when you build those new pathways in your brain of how to respond, then those old ones, like you said, you were like, why didn't I think, like those literally die in your brain as you build those new pathways.
Yeah.
That's happening. That's awesome.
Teresa, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, this week for, Bob is a 6, and, like, the security is a big thing. And the other day he came up and he goes, oh my gosh, I hate being a 6 sometimes. He's recognizing that, just the interactions and just where he goes to, like, the unhealthy side.
Yeah.
But it was good because he worked through it. Like, it was just recognizing that he is a 6. He's not deficient. This is how God hardwired him.
Exactly.
But he can do something about it. I feel it's empowering now, for both of us.
And it's that self-awareness, like she was talking about. Like,
Yep.
once you realize what's happening, you're able to do something else, right? That's that pivot. Like, okay,
Yep.
let me stop. Let me process this. Let me think through it. And what do I need to do? Go ahead, Bob.
It's just what Stephanie just shared. Verse of scripture came to mind was a soft answer turns away wrath, but grievous words stirs up strife. And Stephanie, you took the soft answer route, and you saw the fruit of it.
Yep.
And so now it encourages you to do the same thing again.
More.
So it was really cool.
One of the biggest things that has helped me is Joni has said to me, especially being an 8, notice the physical reaction to something. And as an 8, the moment something goes down that I think is annoying or wrong or stupid, I instantly can feel my skin boiling. And I can feel my heartbeat speed up, and I pant. It's a very physical thing, and I start to lose control very quickly, and I want to go and tell you all about yourself and show you all the things you're doing wrong, and use facts like Brad. I'm a fact person. Here's this, and this, and then come fight me because you can't, because I just gave you 35 facts. And so, now that at the moment, Joni told me in coaching, the moment you feel a physical reaction, stop. Put your phone down, walk away, take a walk, and then you can come back. And it has saved me about 10 times, including with that employee who I found going through my office after she was gone. I instantly had this email typed up, and I was going to tell her I knew and blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, wait a minute. Ooh, I can feel my chest tight. I'm pissed, and then I was like, why though? And what's going to come about of this? She doesn't work for me anymore. What's your point? What's your motive? And then I was just like, what will come out of this? And when I really slowed down and was like, holy crap, nothing. It's just drama. You're just creating a bunch of drama to show you're the tough guy in town. Good for you. What a lonely place.
What's the quote, Molly, from our other video?
Yeah, your prize for being right is self-satisfied loneliness.
Yeah. That has become so apparent to me. I'm just like, what's the point? Okay. And this said employee has sent me 3 new policies this week, and she don't even work for me anymore.
Right.
Because I kept that bridge there. I kept the kindness.
And God said he'd make your enemies your footstool. So
yeah.
Jessica wants to know what that was from.
That 2 weeks ago in that video.
Oh yeah, from the video.
What was that what you're?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the.
What was it? Your prize for being right is self-serving loneliness. Is that what you said? Self-satisfying.
What is Dustin a 4? Is that?
Yeah.
A 4.
Yeah. It just, my own thought process listening to you was, it really has to do with your approach. Like, I feel like the 4 is ready to be, sitting in that empathetic mindset, but he's shutting off with the approach that he's seeing from you. Like, it seems like it's pretty clear that it's all about, it shouldn't be all about you, but it's like your approach has everything to do with it.
That's good, Brad. Yeah.
No, it really does. When we first met, he was very kind, very chill, and I had literally watched him over the years turn into me, becoming very aggressive, very confrontational. And then it just was a poisonous marriage.
And now that I have been able to come down, and I expected that to be immediate for him too. I'm like, well, I've stopped. You need to stop. But I had built that foundation, Brad, that he was so standoffish, I couldn't do anything at all. And now with this change and this awareness between the two of us, I have watched him start to go back into his old Dustin self, the one before I damaged and broke him.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure from your perspective, it was frustrating and you weren't understanding, your normal approach, what that was doing to him, and it, being so unclear, just of course continuing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've noticed as an 8 is I expect you to, even if you're telling me something, I need you to get it out in 32 seconds or you've done lost me. You lost me. Come on. What's your point? Get to your point. And I say that to my kids too. They'll start to tell me a story. I'm like, oh my God, you're wearing me out. Let's go. And I'm like, what kind of mother says that? You hear, Sailor? But what'd you say, Brad?
I said I do that a lot, way too much. Say that exact thing. Like, can you please cut out?
Yeah, you're just like, get to your point.
Yeah.
But what's funny is
all the extra,
the opposite side, when he's explaining things, it's like the most long, drawn out, like every little detail is brought in, and I'm like, Mommy. I never see.
But those are important details.
Right.
I'm with you. I can't get to it. I got to go all the way around with examples. I need to give you examples and facts. That's how I show you what I'm trying to say. But if you have them, I don't need to hear all that.
Right.
What I've tried to be more conscious of is, like, as soon as I start talking, try to be aware, do they actually care? Like, if anything I'm saying. Sometimes it's, like, pretty obvious. Like, they're not saying anything, but, like, they don't care. Like, Emily the other day, what was I talking? Oh, the space shuttle taking off. Like, I almost knew before I even said anything about, like, it goes like, what, 5,600 miles per hour or something when it takes off. And then Emily, she was 4, and she's like,
That's my other sister, for those of you that don't know.
And she said, tell me more. And I was like, yeah, I get it. You don't care.
I already know.
But she knows that he needs to get all those facts out. So she really was trying to be like, okay, you need to go through this whole process of explaining every detail about the entire structure and blah, blah, blah. So, and she doesn't care, but he cared about talking about it. So she was like, really? Tell me some more of your facts. Tell me all the facts, Brad.
Yeah. So let's talk about the 6s. Hey, Stacy and Dan. So some purposeful thoughts from a 6. I love these. I found, especially this lady. Go for it. No, it's too risky. Why wasn't I consulted? So they have all these opposing views going on at the same time when they're trying to make decisions. Know the rules well so you can break them effectively. That's their rebellious side that comes out, but they're going to do it the right way when they do it. Worst case scenario, it can kill you. The believer is happy, the doubter is wise. Loyalty, remaining true to people who need me, even when circumstances are tough. So we love our 6s. They are reliable, they're responsible, they're stable. Indecisive rebels sometimes, but they're connected. They champion others and causes, which we love them for that. And they are cooperative, and that's where that dutiful or compliant stance comes into play. Motivations are to have clear direction and guidance, and fears of not being supported or being abandoned, whether physically or emotionally. Okay. Type 6s are committed. They are faithful. Sometimes they get suspicious of others, and again, that's mostly because they may not have all the information in order to make the best possible decisions that they need to make, which then causes them to be a little bit anxious on one side or a lot of bit anxious on the other side, depending on whether they register as a regular 6 or a counterphobic 6. Counterphobic 6s run towards fear and want to prove that they're not afraid, so they kind of live in that fear, that state, and can appear to be an 8. So they get aggressive and they get rebellious and they get very upfront in your face.
So that's why they run, because they fear it.
Run where? Towards or away?
Away.
So for sixes that run away are not like that. Sixes that run towards fear, which is the counterphobic six, wants to run towards fear so they can prove that they're not afraid. It's like, oh, I'm going to go do this because, you know, I'm going to satisfy my fears and my anxieties that are going on inside of me.
That's pretty good.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Is that more that they're trying to prove it to themselves?
Correct.
Not fearful, like they are fearful, but they're trying to prove that they're not.
Yes.
Or isn't it more trying to make the circumstance more safe? Like they feel more secure in feeling like they have a hand in challenging the safety?
Not necessarily. It's more to prove that it's almost like a battle of the minds for a counterphobic six. It's kind of more like Brad said, I'm proving to myself that I'm not going to let this fear overtake me, and this fear is not going to control me. So that's why they look more like an 8, because it's like, you're not going to control me. I'm going to go after this, even though inside they're fighting this kind of tug of war. Like, I'm really afraid to do this, but I'm about to go jump off a cliff. So if they were like with friends, for instance, and that they're cliff diving or doing something of that nature, the normal 6 would be like, I'm not doing that. That's completely crazy. I'm going to hit every rock on the way down, and then when I get down there, I'm going to drown, and then somehow my foot's going to get hooked on a seashell, and it's going to take me all the way down to the bottom of the ocean. Versus a counterphobic 6 is like, oh my God, yes, let's do this. I mean, I'm really not, but yes, let's do this, and then they're going to do it anyway, just to prove that they're free.
Yeah. So like when Jen in the interview, like in saying,
like when she likes to travel,
job, for example, like when there are things that she feels like, even like curriculum wise, like this is not going to serve the best like education of our children, and she will fight for it, like in fear that they're going to have a deficit. Yes. Is that so much her having a fear, like confronting a fear, and so she approaches it, or making sure that the fear is not realized for the people that she's concerned about?
It's more of the potential of it happening, and it doesn't get realized. Yes.
So that's
the latter of that.
Am I misunderstanding the sense? So wouldn't that be less about her approaching, like her trying to face the fear as opposed to trying to protect the people that she's fearing for?
No, and that's correct. She's a regular 6. She's not a counterphobic 6.
Really?
Both are
even said in that she was. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought that's what we said.
Okay.
You don't have to be like one and stick there. Like I vacillate between the two.
In the stances?
No.
It's not a stance. It's just like
it's just the 6 itself, the main type of a 6.
I'm confused with the 6, but
well, the 6 is the only number that has this.
Oh, okay.
That's why.
I'm confused.
That's why.
Okay.
So
counterphobic isn't a stance?
No.
What? I'm sorry, I'm confusing them.
Yeah, I am too. So
the counterphobic 6 is not a stance. The counterphobic 6 is a deviation of the main type.
Okay. That's different than like a 1-to-1. Okay.
Not a subtype.
Okay. All right. Sorry. That's what I was confusing. Okay.
Nope, not a subtype. So, and to Molly's point, if we were talking about a specific situation on the podcast, because I'm not remembering the particular example, the 6s can, like she said, vacillate between their main type of some things where they're very worst case scenario. Nope, I'm not doing that. These are all the things that can happen, versus I'm in a situation where I'm feeling froggy and I'm just going to be like, I'm just going to go after it, even though it's freaking me out. And that's what a counterphobic 6 would do. Yes.
And that can just be in the moment, not necessarily. Got it. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't understand that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think there's probably 6s that can live more in one space over the other, like identify more with one over the other.
But they don't have to be in one or the other.
For me, like, I think a 6, when they enter more into the like a counterphobic place, like they just look like an 8.
Yeah, because like in knowing Molly versus Jen or like Ashley Morris, like the way they approach things being so different. Again, like it's
There's also the stances on top of that, so that's why people look so different.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that more healthy or unhealthy? Like I'm thinking of it both ways.
I think it's just different.
It's just different, and even with this being a variation, you could align to the point you were bringing up, Jess.
Yeah.
The counterphobic can look like a sexual 1-to-1 6, but not always.
Okay.
They just are generally more counterphobic. The 1-to-1 6s are. So.
Wait, say that one more time.
The 1-to-1 subtype of a 6 are generally associated with the counterphobic 6s.
Okay.
So they express their fear through denial of the fear that's happening.
Okay.
By doing the opposite, by running towards whatever's happening, by denouncing whatever anxiety that is coming up, even if they're feeling very fearful about a situation that might be occurring, they basically talk themselves out of it at that point. And they appear bold, confident, fierce, which is why, again, they appear almost like an 8 at that point.
This is 1-to-1, or this is counterphobic?
1-to-1. This is a 1-to-1, mostly associated with counterphobic 6s.
Okay. Yeah, that's it.
Engage in physical and verbal behaviors that a normal 6 would be more compliant and more dutiful to say whatever you want to do, like whatever. But
a counterphobic can be the other stances as well.
Exactly. So that's why I didn't want to pigeonhole it.
Right.
But they are mostly known to be the more 1-to-1 6. Yes.
Okay.
Which we'll talk about.
Okay. Sorry.
No, you're good. Nope, you're good. So their anxieties is scanning the horizon, trying to predict and prevent negative outcomes. So they're always kind of, you want a 6 on your team. You want a 6 in your circle, because they're going to help you understand things from a broad spectrum. So if you're like trying to plan something, a 6 is good to have, because they're going to think of things that you didn't think of, and they're going to say, what about this, or what about this, and what if this happened, and then what if this happened? So they're able to help go through all of those different types of scenarios that would help a team. They just have to obviously work to keep that in check, right, so that it doesn't get over the top. Their psychological defense is projecting, and you all talked a little bit about that earlier, and that's to avoid it by maintaining that self-image of loyalty and trying to accept oneself. So they're both positive. It has positive and negative qualities. So Molly described last week how sometimes she just walks herself through, could this happen? Is this actually real, or is this not real altogether? So 6s have to ask themselves those questions. So sometimes before they present it to others, or before they kind of call it out loud, they want to ensure that what they're bringing up does make sense, and that they're not just projecting their own feelings and their own fears and anxieties onto other people. So those are important to think through as a 6 in that psychological defense mechanism is this real, or could this be real, or is this not real altogether, and there's something going on inside of me and I need to figure out what that is. Okay. So misaligned with the gospel, 6s are going to be very reactive, again, anxious, fearful, skeptical, suspicious of other people and situations and environments. They're very untrusting, and they have a lot of self-doubt on the inside. So they don't always trust what's going on within them, and so therefore they shy away and they kind of pull back from other people and conversations, because they're not sure of what they think is what should be the right thing to think, or the right decision, or giving the right answer. But when they are aligned, they're very warm and caring. They're very compassionate, because again, They're that loyal guardian. They're very inclusive of a team, of bringing everybody together. Witty, good listeners, very engaged. They want to see the overall good happen, and they want to be that person to help bring that together. So that's when they want to move towards being more on the healthier side. So the 6 wings, 6 wing 5 is the defender. They are quieter. They do think through things a little bit more introverted, intellectual. They do take their time with things, so they don't rush and kind of get ahead of themselves. They're very focused, but on the other side of that can also be very paranoid and standoffish from people, because they're letting that anxiousness kind of overtake them. So that's kind of the rub they have to pay attention to on that side. And then the 6 wing 7 is known as the buddy. They're more extroverted, more colorful, more in touch with others, more sociable, obviously, can be materialistic, playful, funny, energetic, active, but sometimes could also be impulsive because they're pulling from that 7 to want to keep everything, new and alive. Teresa, I see you laughing. Which one do you think, Bob?
Oh, sweet baby. He is a 6'5". He is like so hyper vigilant. He's over focused. He's gotten better. No, but I'm just like thinking back like years ago. Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like no doubt whatsoever, not even deviation.
Right. What about you, Molly? Which side do you feel like you maybe lean towards more?
I'm heavier toward the 6'5".
No, she wasn't. She was a 6'7" when I met her.
For sure. Up until she had Harper, she was way more of a 6'7".
Okay.
I was misled.
I definitely can pull from the 7, but I'm confused if it's me pulling more from my 7 wing or me pulling more counterphobic.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure it matters either, but I'm just.
It may not necessarily matter, but maybe when we go through the subtypes, maybe let's talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Was this before you had kids or getting? So I think that's what it matters, like where your sensitivity when you had.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah.
Like it was like an overnight change. But you also have so much more responsibility, as a parent. Like it changes.
Yeah.
I think that's where she pulls from her 5 wing.
That's definitely like one thing for a 6, which I remember Jen saying this in the interview. And I think she was speaking in respects to being a teacher, but she was saying like when she's not being supported or she doesn't feel like other people understand her thought processes.
Yeah.
At that point, then she feels the weight, and it's like a weight, it's a heaviness of responsibility. And 6s are in a dutiful stance, and like they are very responsible and reliable. And but when you aren't understood, you take that on as a weight. Like it becomes.
That's good. It's a good understanding.
Because you're feeling abandoned. You're feeling emotionally abandoned, not safe, and then it's a weight. So that makes it very hard to pull from a 7 wing, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's so all that piece of you is so like counter to what you're feeling.
Right.
And not feeling understood is a 5.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Yep.
That's a really, really powerful description, Molly. Like to think about it as a weight, like it holds you back from being as free as maybe you choose to be because you feel like you have to carry everything.
Right.
I mean, almost like it's almost a picture of a mom, right? Like you're literally carrying like the diaper bag and this bag and like you're carrying so much that it holds you back, like it holds you down.
Right.
That's super interesting to think about, like in the way Jen described it too.
Right.
Like as a weight, like
describing it in relation to like work and
right.
think about it, like I think definitely only for a mom, but for anybody, when you're responsible for kids, that like you're a caregiver, an aunt, a mom, dad, like that is the biggest responsibility because they're helpless and you're literally responsible for their life.
Yeah.
Like they don't make their decision. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that example, and Jen had that same example where that trips her up the most is with her students.
Yeah. It makes it sound like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
They're not responsible for themselves.
Right.
You then are that person that literally is responsible for them.
Yeah. It seems like being a 6 parent would be the most stressful. Yeah. Challenging.
Let me tell you.
Their imaginations run wild with like what could go wrong.
But
Right.
I think that's true with any parent to some extent. It just lands on a 6 differently.
Yeah. It lands heavier on you. Like
Yeah.
that weight idea.
I have a question. So I totally feel that same way with like the emotional toll for me, and I don't know if it's just 7 or if it's a six wing for me, but like I could be having a great day at work, say like just recently, and then one person like sends me all these messages making me say like act as if I'm like not being kind, I'm not being respectful of their time, and like because I'm running late and they change their plans, and like I literally am drained for like the rest of the night because of that. Because I'm like, dude, you don't understand. And I know I fall into the category, I always say, I hate being misunderstood. And so it's a kind of like that, but like, I can't stop thinking about it. And it's like overwhelming to me. Yeah. And I don't always get like that with being a mom because I feel more in control, I guess, but that I had no control over, but yet it was like the exact opposite of like anything that I was intending.
I think that could be the one side, Stacey, of you going towards a 1 is you feel like you did something wrong. Whereas like it's very important to you to be kind.
Yeah.
And be like hopeful and energetic and like the 7 side of you. But it's also important to you to be doing things well and right. And like to you, those are good things.
Yeah.
Someone tries to tell you you're not kind, you're not good, you're not right, you're not. Am I right about that, Jenny?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the only thing is, am I unhealthy when I go to 1 as a 7? So then I get confused is that all that stuff that I'm trying to do is actually not good. But yeah, it's the only thing that actually keeps me in check with like my life too.
It's the feeling, the overbearing weight of being critical on yourself. That's where it leans negative. Okay. Like you focusing on it, like you're not being unkind,
right?
But you're allowing that overwhelming critic to tell you are wrong. Like, I mean, I fall into that all the time where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like a horrible person now. I shouldn't be friends with anyone because I'm just, you just go over the edge.
Is 1 the stress number for 7?
Yeah. But like, so like, yeah, I definitely take offense to that. And I get irritated because I'm like, whoa, you are just totally making it out to be something other than what it is. And like, I've done my best. I'm working. I can't communicate. I can't make changes when I'm working to like, and it just like drains me emotionally. So I didn't know if that's like just being an unhealthy 7, if it's a 1, if it's my 6 wing, just trying to understand it.
So, yes, that's unhealthy. But the work then that you have to do is with SNAP. So understanding again, like Stephanie was talking about it a little bit before she had to hop off, is you starting to feel those things in your body and know what those activations are. So basically for you would be, you start reading these texts and you're like, okay, they're upset about X, Y, or Z. I know there was nothing I could have done about that per se, right? Outside of half stepping throughout the day, right? But you're not going to do that. So then making that decision of how you need to handle it, number 1, inside. So you need to walk yourself through how you need to have the stance you need to take personally, right? So number 1, getting yourself in check. So I know I didn't do anything wrong. I'm going to address her when I talk, with that. And then I'm okay knowing I can move forward after this. Not that I'm going to hold on to anything, not that I'm going to have a grudge, not that I'm going to do any of those things, this is what happened. Here's how I'm going to keep myself in check. Here's how I'm going to respond. And then here's how I'm going to move forward. So it's doing that snap with yourself. And then you even have to pivot with yourself, because your normal detrimental behavior is to ruminate, right? You're in the head triad. And then you're also then going to go to that one, which means, like she mentioned, that inner critic is going to show up. And now you're going to be berated in your head about the situation. So that's the normal detrimental behavior. The pivot is you're going to say, this was out of my control. I'm going to address it with the client, and then I'm going to move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's eventually where I got to, but it's still kind of like one of those things where it's like, I still am working on it, I guess. Just like how do I, because this is obviously something that's going to happen often.
Yeah, it is. And that's exactly.
I have to like figure it out. But like, I definitely like don't like people to tell me like, well, you weren't doing something right and I tried to do this and you weren't there. And it's like, listen, you're throwing things at me that I couldn't change in the time frame I was working. And I'm sorry that I ran over, but I also asked for patience in scheduling. And she just kept like saying, well, I did this and I did that. And I was there early and I told my husband, and I'm like, I'm sorry that you did all that. I didn't ask for you to go through all that. The last I knew was this was the time frame of your appointment. And then you ended up not being there when I was ready for you left. So I'm sorry. That is what it is. But then it's like, I still have like, I'm still like a little ticked. And if I go to like say, well, I really don't want to schedule you now. You're being a jerk to me. But so I obviously that's immature and I need to move on. But it's still just like irritating.
It was just irritating, and that was more your 8-wing.
Yeah, and maybe that also hits, and then I'm like, well, I ain't gonna be your stylist anymore. Then fine, I don't need you.
When she gets mad, all the numbers come after you.
That's right. That's right.
And then here's Mr. Peacemaker over here being like, well, I can see how she was like this, and I'm like, what? You can't see my side of it at all?
Yeah. So now you guys missed the video. Dan, we're working on not dismissing our partners.
Wait, hold on.
You guys missed the video.
Wait. I didn't dismiss her. I said, here's where I feel like she went wrong. Here's where I feel like you went wrong. And you guys are just going after each other now like this. And it's all in text. Like, if you were to sit there and talk to her, I guarantee everything would be completely different.
Yeah.
Yes, but you immediately offered advice in perspective versus recognizing what she said first.
Well, I was on her side until I came home.
He was on my side, and then he completely changed. It was like, I think she probably, well, you were late. I'm like, okay, I also asked for people to have patience, and I said maybe around this time. It was more of a guesstimation of time. So now she's mad that I wasn't done with her.
I just didn't want her to go off the handle and like completely sever this.
I'm not. I never sever my relationship.
You know what, Dan? Okay, so this is what happens. I like all of my numbers come out when there's a situation. All of them, every single one of them. And that Bob's gotten after all these years, he goes, is this when I'm allowed to say something or not? And most of the time it's not, because I just have to get it off. I know the answer. I know what I need to do. It's just
I cycle through it.
And he doesn't need to fix. You know, that's where Bob just has to, like, he gets his role, like, okay, I got to sit for a minute and listen to all this.
So you got to ask a question, Dan. You got to be like,
clarifying question.
Do you want me to say something, or do you just want me to sit here and listen?
Safeway.
Or should I go to the basement?
Or should I go? Yeah, or should I go away?
Well, I will eventually process it, and I have to make it. I have to get past it, and I have to figure it out. But it's just like in that heat of the moment, it's just like, like what was I supposed to do?
Yeah, that's true. No, that makes sense. That makes
sense. And Joni said the perfect word, ruminate, because I ruminate. Like it goes over, and he can hear about it for like a week sometimes. And I'm like, Therese, get over it. You know, like you need to pivot. You know, just shut up. You know.
But that is a very nine thing, the serenity now and then explode, right? So like you're ruminating and then every once in a while it's just gonna come out.
Yeah, well, because she goes to the 6. That's where Teresa goes. So that's why she goes into her head. That she moved over to the head triad in her stress. So very good. And we're gonna look at that now, the stress path and the growth path. So the 6 moves towards the average to unhealthy of a 3. Okay, so they arrogant believe that all they see are all these bad possible scenarios that are going on. They stay very busy, like a 3. You know, they work in order to avoid walking themselves through how they feel and processing. They refuse to see something new if failure is a possibility. So they basically, their butts are in the way, right? All of their butts are in the way of moving forward and being able to see things for what they could be. And they worry about their self-image. So they put on this, again, buddy, everybody, I'm the loyal guardian personality in order to get that established support and loyalty from other people, which in hindsight, right, for like a 3, that's fake. So it doesn't come across well because people can see right through it. So pay attention to these types of things. When you find yourself doing this, you're probably in an unhealthy state as a 6. On the other side of that, moving towards your growth number of a 9, Sister Teresa, you relax more and you enjoy moments and you enable your mind to slow down and to stop the hypervigilance, and you're able to enjoy what's happening around you and the people around you and not worried that things will blow up in front of you. You develop those secure relationships that you were so suspicious of, or that you kind of held at a distance, becoming less reactive and trying to go through the problem solving with people. So, because that's another thing though about 6s, they're very good problem solvers because they're able to deep dive to root cause and think through things when they're in a healthy state. They become more empathetic, compassionate, and receptive to others. And again, that's that reaching out, reaching towards their stance that they're naturally in. And then they trust their inner discernment more, that they're less doubtful of themselves, less doubtful of others. And see, that's the thing with 6s. And me and Molly kind of got to this probably like 2 weeks ago in some coaching, was the missing factor for 6s is trust. Trust in relationships, trust in situations, trust in what's happening. If they can move towards a place of trust, which means I am reducing the gap between the known and the unknown, I can start to get a hold of the anxiety and the fear of what's happening inside of me and what's happening around me. So that's probably the biggest piece, blind spot for a 6. When they're having issues with people or a situation, it's usually due to a lack of trust. I don't trust you. I don't trust the situation. I don't trust the environment. I don't trust the surroundings. I don't trust what's happening. I don't trust the authority figure. I don't trust myself. I don't trust the information I'm getting. That suspiciousness and that hypervigilance starts to play very, very, very hard in their mindset. And again, pay attention to that 9s because you can move to a 6. Pay attention to that 7s. If you have a 6 wing, pay attention to that 5s because you have a 6 wing. So if you're experiencing these things, probably know you're not moving in the right direction. Make sense? So as we move from average to unhealthy, or aligned to out of alignment, very healthy, you take your anxieties and insecurities to God. You know, he's both able and faithful to care for you. You don't have to worry about being abandoned or not supported because God is that person in your life, and allows your mind, again, to stop racing and to stop thinking through all of these worst case scenarios, and you place your trust in him, and you're able to know that God is the author and the finisher of your faith, and you don't have to worry about trying to outline all the worst case scenario plans for your life yourself. You understand there's never certainty of safety or security on earth, right? We should just kind of know that as in general, like anything's liable to blow up these days here on the planet Earth and in the United States of crazy America. So that's just what it is, right? But we can trust in, they can know they can trust in God for that love, for that protection, for providing for them, their families. They remain warm, loving, witty, engaging, trusting, playful, loyal, team dynamic thinking of others, keep collaborating, wanting to be a part of the process, wanting to be a part of the solution versus holding up the process because they're trying to think through things too much. They follow through on their commitments. And again, they help with troubleshooting problems because they're good problem solvers because they're able to think through all of the things that need to happen in situations or in environments themselves. As they start to move towards unhealth, out of those initial thinkings, they start to believe they're alone. And they need to, again, look for danger. Danger, danger, danger. They start taking control of situations because nobody else is going to do it, so I got to do it. And even though they might even have people that are there that are wanting to help and be a part of the process, but at this point, they're not letting people participate. And even when people are asking to participate. So again, this is a watch out for you, and these are activations for you. You constantly start questioning everything and everyone to predict the future. So here's where they even start to take on their 5 wing, and they start to try to gather information and give me I need to understand and know everything about that. And if we're going to travel, I need to know every place we're going and everything about every location we plan on stopping at and who's going to be there. And well, what if, so they start gathering information and become interrogators, so to speak. And then they're looking for a dependable authority to trust and guide them. Okay. So they may inadvertently even pick somebody that they start to lean too heavily on because they shouldn't do that either. And they may even put people in places within friendships and things that in places they don't belong because they're trying to find that person they can always check in with and does this make sense and go through all their scenarios with. Okay. Completely out of alignment, they remain on constant vigilance about the dangers at every single turn. It's always something that could happen. These 6s have trouble leaving the house. These 6s have trouble driving to places or going, doing different types of things because they're very hyper vigilant and suspicious of everyone, and can lead to paranoia, like actual paranoia. They're failing to trust themselves or the people around them. And then their thinking and decision-making abilities go out the door because they're no longer being rational or logical at that point. And basically it makes them feel even more by themselves. They become cynical. You're never going to help me anyway. You're never a part of the process. I can't depend on you. And they become very sarcastic. And again, they look like an unhealthy 8 when they move this far to the spectrum. So any questions on the ranges of what a 6 could look like? So this is also how you can look very different as a 6 as well, based on your health and based on whether you're in alignment or not.
I don't want this to come across as I feel like most of the things I'm going to say is going to come across as I'm bashing Molly. This is super frustrating as an 8 to live with a 6 because as an 8, you don't feel, you are a complete opposite. You don't feel any of this, like they say fears and you're just like, how did that even enter your mind?
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like, so.
Yeah, me and Molly talked about this.
The analogy I like to use is like we have a lot of safety people at my job and their job is to like make you stop and think about what you're going to do.
I'd be great at that job.
You would definitely be great as an EH&S manager.
The problem when it comes to a bad safety person though is that you never get anything accomplished because they focus so hard on, because they're like, what are you going to do? I'm going to do this. And they're like, well, you sure you want to do that? Because this could happen. I'm like, yeah, okay. Well, so we'll do this. And they're like, well, if you do that, though, then that's not going to work either.
Well, and there's the rub between a 6 and an 8 because 8s are so impulsive. They don't, like, we literally are like, everybody has to stop and think and process. And that's literally the total opposite of an 8. They think and they go do.
Yes.
So we're like literally 2 opposite ends of the spectrum.
But you're also the opposite, like me and John. I don't feel, I need someone in my life to help me walk through feeling.
Right.
you don't stop and think. You need someone to help you stop and think. You stop and think too much. You need to learn how to do more.
Right.
So you have to view it in that frame that your partner has what you need.
Exactly.
And honestly, it's hard because when you've seen them live as a 6-wing 7, you've seen them.
That's true. Yeah.
Truly live like.
Yeah.
And then it's sad to see the 6-wing 5 because it's just like, man, like I told her this earlier this morning. I was like, my concern is that you just go through life and you kind of miss being able to enjoy certain things because you've focused solely on things you can't control, and you've chosen to just focus on that and not been able to enjoy the time.
That's true. That's true too.
Get the time back. It goes. And I just don't want her to look back and be like, wow, man, I wish I would have why didn't I just stop and why didn't I just enjoy it? Why did I have to focus on if the moon fell from the sky that day? Or like, those are the things those
are what you're kind of walking yourself through. Yeah. So
we can stop and think. I'm not saying let's not think about stuff.
Yeah. No.
It's hard for me to watch that because I love her and because I just don't want her to miss out.
Yeah. But and that's the thing too for a 6 is being open to hearing those things and how you can start to move in another, like Jessica was saying. So we get about the swimming piece, but it's instead of me just automatically shutting that down, saying, and I'm not saying this is the case, I'm just using that as an example, saying, sure, let's go, but let's go together. That would have been what you offered from the beginning when she asked you to take her to go swimming, right? Instead of us maybe going around the circle in order to get there. But again, same thing like Jessica explained, how she understands where she was coming from and validating that and being able to walk through that. So it's coming and understanding both perspectives, like we talked about in the video, because when we shut down people, we're really shutting down that inner vulnerable person on the inside. And when children get shut down, they stop participating. And that's basically what it was saying as how people grow cold, right? Is because if I've gotten shut down so many times and I don't have a safe space to even bring whatever it is I want to say to the table, then I'm just not going to bring anything to the table at all, right? And me and John were there. I get it. And the enemy wanted us to go there this week too. And I'm just like, yeah, we're not going there. We've already crossed over that mountain. So you do have to do the work in order to get to where you are who you are, I am who I am. How do we work together and bring both of those perspectives to the table in order for us to have a full, happy life? Like, because we can't shut down life because of our unhealthy traits of the box that we live in called the Enneagram number. That's the point, is to break out of the box. So as these things are starting to come, as we reveal them through the course each week, the idea is to recognize that these things are in you, that for the 6s this week, we're talking about you, that yes, you do go to extremes and ask way too many questions versus let me get the gist of it and then help me move on, right, to the people in my life. So you do have to think about these things as they're starting to bubble up each week about your numbers. Like, yep, I find myself doing these things and I need to look at how do I pivot? How do I snap out of it? Because that's the idea, is not to live there, but to do it in a way that does bring perspective to the conversation or the situation, because it is good to ask questions and it is good to understand, but it should not limit you from living life. If that makes sense. Is that something?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's where the communication is so pivotal. And especially like, this is powerful for us because we're understanding one another's numbers. We're leaning into that. Whereas we have to have the grace to know that not all people have this tool to fall back into. So like as you were talking, I was thinking about how when you said you can just get to the point where you're like, okay, well, people just draw away. So, and again, this is not to disparage Molly, but I'm just as knowing a 6, like there are often times where people will say, okay, let's go do this. And she'll, in her head, I'm sure she's thinking through these fearful situations and she's just like, well, no. And then if they ask questions, you can become like shut down, even more shut down or offended instead of like explaining it. But if you would say, and it's because you feel like there's the possibility that you're going to be invalidated, which that's not healthy from the person listening. But for you practicing saying, like communicating that out and saying, you know, this is what I would be fearful of. Do you think that we could work through like how to diffuse those? Would help a 6 to grow. And it also doesn't create the pattern of someone saying, well, we just know that they're always going to shut down from life and they're never going to enjoy doing something. And they don't realize it's because a fear was not validated. So if the 6 can learn to communicate those fears in such a way that they're delicately expressed and with safe people that will accept them, or keep trying until you're heard, like not give up, because then you're giving up on experiencing some things in life. And you don't, like, I think what's interesting is when you said for a misalign, or I'm sorry, for a, it was this one slide back. I can't remember what that was. Oh, the stress path. Yeah. That when you go towards a 3, what is that last thing? Worrying about your self-image. So you don't want to come across as defensive, or you don't want to come across as fearful, or like being afraid of that self-image coming forward. Instead, you just decide, I'm just going to say no and give no explanation, because then I don't have to worry about like what my self-image looks like. But as in practicing that communication, then you can learn to work through fears that may or may not be valid, but you learn to express them in such a way so that people can accept them. And then to Brandon's point, you're not missing out on life because you're just not even engaging in it.
Yeah, Bob, do you feel like that's something you do as well?
Oh yeah, at times. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's very true too.
Well, okay, I was going to say, I was going to piggyback on what Brandon said a little bit. So Bob, like, I don't know how much like people remember Bob. So Bob is one of 6 kids, and his dad was killed in front of his eyes, you know, when he was a kid. So imagine a 6, safety is removed. So what you said, Molly, about, you know, carrying this through your life, that's been his core. Like you said, you transitioned when you to a 5 more so when you became a mom, but he's been like coming up that way, and that's been his core belief, carrying like a bag of rocks. Everything was measured. There was not, like, if I would say, hey, do you want to go away this weekend? He goes, well, you do know everything's answered out of that 5. Like, well, you do know that I haven't checked the oil in the car, and I haven't checked like this, and I haven't checked this, and I haven't done this. He lived a life of hypervigilance to the 10th degree. I think he was a 12, really, you know, let's just double his 6. But like, he's getting better out of it. He does answer out of that 5 a lot. And he was better a couple of years ago. He's just kind of like living that. But I feel like you, Brandon, sometimes, like, do you realize like life is but a vapor, like the Bible says? And when are you going to let yourself feel that today is okay? When are you going to let yourself breathe, you know, and life is going to be okay, like we have right now? And so it's been actually a good, you know, going through this, like pivoting, like, okay, what is the worst case scenario right now? What is going through your head? Let's think it through. And that's actually been very helpful. But I get that, like, it is like a tough thing, because, and it's not that I'm unsafe, you know, it's just, or I don't think that I'm like so random. It's just that he's over safe, you know, and wants to be over safe. But I get where it's coming from. And it's interesting because he can see, you know, because my nieces are 8 and 11 right now. He can see what happened, like, in that age. I'm like, do you see the misalignment, like, that your mom did, like, after this? Like, look what happened in an 11-year-old. Like, look at that thought process. It's not like really rational, you know? And so it's been an interesting parallel and an interesting just way to look at stuff right now. You know, he's getting a little bit better, and he sees those points where he gets relief. And I think that's the thing, like, he realizes peace can come, but it doesn't always, you know, and it feels good, but he doesn't always live there, you know? I don't know. So it's been a struggle.
Yeah. I think that's the key thing, though, like you said, when you ask clarifying questions and walk alongside him, as opposed to just being like, I don't possibly understand how you could be worried about those things. Like that's the worst thing you can say.
That's the difference, right? Again,
Yeah.
We should never be dismissive in our communication.
And that goes for all people.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and that's
general.
I think it's like paramount for a 6 validation, but that's for all people.
Yeah.
So, but it's like,
but you have to give people the grace that do not know anything about this. Like,
Right.
and you have to give them
Right.
grace because they think you're nuts. They're just like, I mean, with my brother, he gave you that look like, what are you talking about? Because like, we were just raised in the country and like things were, you adapted, but I think you got to give people grace that have no idea like how to walk with you and that stuff. And like and that's where you have to like not
have to communicate,
not give up and just go silent. You have to say like, all right, if you just walk with me here, like this is where I'm coming from and this is why I'm saying this stuff is because I'm fearing that somebody's going to fall off the boat. And that's why I don't want to go boating today with the kids or like, what are you doing that's going to make sure that they don't, you know what I mean? Like if you walk through it with them.
That's why like you have to have people in your life that you trust enough to be vulnerable with. Like for a 6, like if you're not trusting the people around you enough to be vulnerable with them, you're not going to get it.
But you have to give them a chance too.
Right.
Yeah.
So
what do you do in order to help let people prove that they can be trustworthy?
So before we look at that, I think I have to insert this in here. The idea of learning something about this, especially for yourself, is so that you can lead yourself well. I can't expect for somebody to have grace and compassion on me when I first need to be able to speak myself. So at a minimum, and that's what this whole thing is about, right? How do I, coming into my own self-awareness for me, is how do I lead myself well? So if I know that I'm going to ask questions about X, Y, or Z because I feel like they're important to me, it's up to me to say that.
That's good.
It's up to me to say that. I feel this way because.
Yeah.
Like this is kind of what this is really for, is to give us language. It gives us language to be able to communicate better. It's not up to my spouse, so to speak, to know everything that's going on inside of my head. They're not psychics. And then we can say all day long is, you should know me by now, or you should know me, or you should know this, and you're taking the Enneagram class too. You should know that this is how I am. Sure, they should be learning these things, especially if they're showing up every week. But at a minimum, you have to lead yourself well. You got to lead yourself well.
That's really good. Because that gives us, all of us in all of our numbers, like that fuel to say, like, what is it that I need to step into? So specifically in talking for the 6, you're saying like, you have to communicate those fears because we can't read your mind.
Exactly.
And then, so I have a question for the 6s, like when you're in a place where you feel fearful, or like if someone asks you about doing something and they can sense that like pushback or hesitation, when you're in those moments, 2 questions. 1, do you want to move forward and move past that? Or is that like, you don't even want to, like, so the question, like, is the desire there? Like, do you want help to move out of that? And then secondly, like, how do we support you best? Sorry, I wrote down the question so I didn't forget it. How do we support you to move forward when you're stopped by those fears? So like, as people that love you, when we hear that from you, do you even want to move forward? And then if you do, how do we best support you so that when you have that initial like, nope, we're not doing that, or I don't know, when we can sense that from you, how do we help you to move forward?
For me, it'd be initially no, but if I had more facts on it, then I would feel more comfortable going forward.
Interesting. Okay.
So before we go to Molly, why no? Because I feel like at that point,
because of lack of facts, lack of knowledge about it. It's new. I need more information on it.
Okay, let me give you one more thing. just because like we've gone round the mountain with this. Bob also, like after his dad died, a lot of the patterning was, okay, we're going to go to the beach. Well, 3 days before, Bob's like, they would say, okay, no, Bob, we're not going to take you because nobody wants to sleep in the same bed with you. So his answer is always no, because he would rather pull the carpet out from under than me pull the carpet out. So that's the dance that we've always had to do. And I feel that's just a pattern that he lived. You know, that's why his no.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think, cause at that point, right, I may need more information, but you need more information. So really the response should be, let me get more information and let me get back to you, versus I don't want to do this, because then to the other person, and probably maybe how Brandon feels a lot of times, is that it's always an automatic pushback. Like, I'm already like, nope, I'm not participating in whatever the participation is, whatever that may look like.
So it's taking a beat and asking yourself, why do I even need more facts here?
Or if I do, let me go
ask them.
Right.
Yeah, it's really hard, because I start to, my confidence drops in myself as a father and person sometimes, and it shouldn't. I mean, I shouldn't let that happen, but you know, whenever it's just a immediate no, I start to feel like, you know, like Jess said a lot earlier, you know, like what am I doing that just, she does not trust me at all. Like, and early on in parenthood, it was like, I must really suck as a dad, because like, she doesn't trust me to even do this. Like, she'd rather have one of her sisters do it or her mom do it. And I would like question her, and she wouldn't have an answer, like a legit answer. And I had no idea. And it was this the whole time.
That's valid.
That was really, really hard. That
is hard.
Really hard.
That is hard. And that's, and again, I guess that's where it's, that leads, coming back to leading yourself well. That's not fair to the person on the other side for you to leave them hanging on without understanding what's happening. And then us on the other side being open to hear that, open to listen and hear what's happening. How about you, Molly? What is something that you need to Jessica's question, is your initial response to be actually,
do you want to move
convinced, or are you just kind of like, no?
I totally agree with what Bob said. Like, it's a maybe because I need more information to make that decision. And I think it depends on where you're at in that moment in health to misalignment, you know what I mean? Yeah. But more often than not, I think it's gonna be a maybe. And sometimes I don't even know why. Like, sometimes I might want to say no, just no, but I'm not even sure why. Because that's the thing with sixes. Sometimes you just have like free floating anxiousness that you're not even grounded and aware of why you feel that way.
So it's like a dust particle, and like condenses on it and it rains. Like, you're just like, the dust particle is like the anxiousness just floating around looking for like water to
occasionally, yes.
On it, and then it falls.
Occasionally, yes. Yeah.
So when people who love you see that, how do we help you to move past it? If you like go through the maybe, you ask questions, and then you're still like, no, like there's just too much fear. Like, when we see that in you guys, Bob and Teresa, like, how do we as people who love you help you feel supported to like take the step and like try to re-engage in life, whether it's, no, we're just going to go on this camping trip with Bob, or like, no, we're just going to take the girls and go do something fun, even though like there may be some danger, or like whatever it is. How do we?
But Jessica, it's not up to us. It's not up to
right, but isn't that the way of loving six? Like, knowing how to support them?
See, like, this is how I do, like, in my marriage, like, what I have to do is, if I want to present that say we want to go away for a weekend, I usually say, you know, like if I feel the hesitation coming, I'm like, don't you remember last time? You know, we had a good time. Everything was fine.
Yeah.
You know, like I have to almost like reassure him, remind him.
Yeah.
Well, I think in that instance, just asking, like, what else do you need to know to make this decision? Because I think a lot of times, like, people are asking sixes to make decisions that, like Bob said, I need more information. I can't make a decision right now.
The information gives us the safety
right
that we need. It's just reinforcement of that. And
I don't think it's unreasonable.
Yeah, and remember we're getting asked a question as to something that's new to do or something like that.
Yeah.
We're used to that same old road to go and say no.
Right.
That's what we're used to.
I just
with more information coming in, that helps clarify it. It's like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah, and also, and like Jess, I guess to answer your question, like it does take a lot of work on the sixes part. Like it is up to them a lot. There's a lot of processing that they need to do themselves, but like to help them, like just show that you're a safe person, ask your clarifying questions, like show that you can like share and have a discussion and be judgment and shame free. Like it goes back to the principles of like understanding each other. Like, like
That's
you.
important. That was good.
What seems obvious to me is instead of like being spontaneously asking a question to do something, like give it a little bit of time ahead and have a little bit of information instead of just, hey, do you want to go here for this? Like it's spur of the moment, which is probably hard for Brandon to do that.
Well, I
Like,
think like for a six, like Teresa, what you're saying, like let's go on this vacation on a whim. Like for a six, anything you ask them to do, it is without effort that in your mind you start to go through everything you have to prepare in order to go do that.
Wow.
So, and it happens like that. So like that in your head, but can become very overwhelming to the point where you're just like, no, like you immediately are starting all of these things you have to do.
So it becomes, it's crazy
exhausting to do it.
So Bob?
It becomes exhausting.
Yeah.
So rather than to
It is exhausting.
go ahead.
And then you're moving to that 5. Yeah. You're like, this is too much time and energy. Like I'm going to shut down. Like you move into that 5 space. Yeah.
It's kind of odd to me how like you know, like in college, I know Molly took trips to the beach for spring break and all kinds of stuff like throughout her life. So like it's odd to me that you guys have like amnesia when it comes to stuff like that. And maybe Bob, you don't, but like when you have experiences where you've independently done stuff, like how you don't draw from that when you go to do something new again is just, it's so interesting to me. Like your immediate thought is like, this is all brand new. I've never done this before. It's not, well, I've kind of done something similar. Like I packed my own stuff and went spontaneously to this place.
But I think of Molly, like if she went with school, like if she went in school, she took a year developing core relationships, and she's moving in a pod. Like I see Bob like moves in a pod well.
Yeah.
You know, like
yes,
so,
because you have people around you that you can trust. Right.
But you know what, Bradley, I would say I call it planned spontaneity for Bob. Like, you know, that's about the best I can do. So.
But even drawing off of the example you just gave, Teresa, how can you then not say that about your spouse whom you live with every day? I think that's what Brandon is saying.
Yeah, that is.
I mean,
you're like, how am I not your pod?
How am I not your pod?
And that makes me feel bad because I'm like, well, you don't trust me. Like, how do you not trust me? I watch Bear Grylls and all this other survival
I think it's the same thing like what Jess was saying earlier. There's like the people closest to you almost take it out of. It's almost like probably a pressure, like when you're with friends, you don't want them to see that weakness inside of you, like that you tend to do with what the group does. But yet he'll push back on me.
I think it's different with a spouse than it is with a bunch of girlfriends.
I think so. Yeah.
And then so you end up like spewing out a lot more on your spouse than you would your friend.
Yeah.
And not that that's right. It just sometimes happens that way.
And something else I found out too, that if I'm in the Word more, I have more of His peace with me.
Yeah.
And so then I'm more free to then go and do whatever, because
Yeah.
he always has my back, and
Right.
he's always there with me, and it's like,
This.
okay, I can enjoy life in that moment.
Yes, that's more aligned. Right.
I don't understand how sixes who are not saved, like, I don't understand it, because like God is literally the only consistent, trustworthy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you can't put anything above that. So I don't understand how they get through.
Yeah, it would be hard. It would be hard because they don't know, they don't have a foundation, so to speak, to stand on, so to speak, because they would constantly be, this could happen, that could happen. Who am I supposed to trust? How am I supposed to get through this? So yes, that is something that sixes. It's a lot of America, right? A lot of people in America obviously have six characteristics. It's why we have such high depression. It's why we have such high even suicide rate, because they can't handle the pressures of these unknowns. These unknowns. That's the unknowns is what is driving the behaviors. And I know I spend a lot of time with Jen, and here's where I was saying, Jess, it's not necessarily what we can do, but it's what they have to do personally. Is daily with her is I have her go through what are some things that are bothering you, that, to Molly's point, free floating. Because if I don't keep that under, contained,
Yeah.
then I will live in a state of fear.
Yeah.
So I need to daily, as a six, you have to daily check in, and to Bob's point, then submit to God. What is it that is bothering me? What is it that I am currently worried about? And keep it in a mindfulness state, as in front of me. What's currently bothering me? What am I worried about? What am I currently thinking could go wrong? What does that look like? It's the same thing with the one in naming their inner critic. So they can tell it to shut up because they already know it's always on. So you have to keep that in front of you, and keep a mindfulness journal almost of here's what anxieties I'm feeling today.
Almost like writing them down and then you're just giving them to God. Like once you name them, you don't have the power that they didn't have. And I just want to say before letting this moment pass, that Molly, like, I just love your heart.
Yeah.
And I love that of all things, like, you don't get very emotional very, very often or very, very easily, but of all things to break your heart, like, how beautiful that the thing that breaks it is the idea that people would walk through life without having God as their security and trust.
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing is too, I know as being a six, and that heart that the Lord's given me, a sensitive heart too, I can pick it up in other people, other sixes, because they have that deficit there.
Yeah.
And I can share, if God gives me the opportunity to share with them, encourage them. Like even this morning at the dentist office, I got talking with the technician, and just in talking, found out she's a Christian too, but I was able to encourage her, because I kind of sense the same thing happening.
Yeah.
You know what, Molly, like one of the things that, I mean, it just sounds like my uncle was a psychologist, so he's, got a lot of influence on us over the years and stuff. And some of the things, like when Bob got unemployed, I mean, that's like one of the biggest fears and deficits, and, just all of the fears being realized. And it was like small things I would make him do, like whether he goes to Lowe's, he needed to be able to communicate out to somebody and be able to feed into them. I said, I don't care what you do. You need to just go say to somebody, have a good day, and be that answer to them. You got to get out of your head. And that's probably the thing, because I think sixes are so heady, and it is a living hell. I mean, you can see it just based on what you said, because you know what they're feeling and you get relief.
Yeah.
Right. Through Christ, you get that relief, but it is a living hell. Because sometimes I feel parts of it, but like, I don't know, like I just feel so bad sometimes that he just doesn't get relief. I mean, he does now more so, but it's a living hell. And that's what Joni's saying, like That's why the suicide rate's up. You know, people don't know what else to do, but it is, if you're a 6, it's tough.
Right. I wonder if right now in the world, like to be a 6, like,
Right.
oh God, crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah, like I'll talk about news and she's just like, I don't know.
Oh, I
about
can't
it.
watch the
And I'm
news.
just like, how do you
I literally
stay on
can't.
top of this? Like,
Yeah, I think most people,
I know
most
that.
people feel that way, but like literally, I can't watch the news.
No, she
always
can't.
Yeah.
She was. I feel like most healthy when she had a receptionist job at a chiropractor's because she could do that. Like she got out of her own head every single day.
Yeah.
Well, not every single day, but like most days, and that would carry on throughout the day. That she wasn't working.
Yeah.
Tony, do you know if 6s, like this just occurred to me and what Teresa was saying, I wonder if there's a correlation between certain types and certain spiritual gifts. Like it seems to me like a 6 would often be high in evangelism because like they hold so dear the truth of the gospel and the freedom of that they would like, they want to share it because it's so like personal and overwhelming to them. Like here's the key to that.
Interesting.
Thing to weight off. Like I just wonder if there are more 6s than other types that are evangelists.
Interesting.
There to give hope.
Yeah.
I had one thought that seemed clear to me when trying to, like, if you're trying to ask something of a 6, you know, if you're saying, do you want to go to the beach? It seems like the 6 is kind of hearing what, like, if you are offering no other information or anything else, like, why are you giving me work? Why are you making me have to think through all of these facts?
Clearly that meant something.
And think through all of these fears. Like, why are you putting this on me? So no. Like it's like immediate no, because you have to think through all this stuff and you're offering me nothing else. You're just asking me a question.
So I have an answer to that.
Thing behind it seems to be like,
and I do that too.
I have an answer to that because my mom is a 5. And if I want my mom to go somewhere or do something, I already know, and now talking through with the 6s are probably similar for different reasons. I have to ask her almost a month or so in advance. Okay? And I know that's crazy, but that's what I have to do. And when I tell her, to Brad's point, I automatically do this with people who are 5s. Or at work, I automatically do these with people who are the financial managers or people who are the analytical types, right? Because they need more time to process. So I would never ask someone who needs time processing, as a 6 does, to go do something that day. I'm not, because they're not going to do it.
Is it helpful to have Jess as your sister being a 1 and being like a task oriented? Like to see a list to say, hey, we're going to do this, 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 and that. Does that help? Or
Molly's actually said that.
Yeah. I'm just interested if that gives you like more like peace and more assurity. When you know that when you're talking to somebody, they're going to be like this. You already in a sense assume, but know that they are always going to be follow through with exact facts.
I've already gone through the details. Like I said, when Brad gave that example, I said, like, that's the same with me. Like, as soon as you say we're going to go on a trip, I'm thinking, what do I need to pack? What are all the details? And like, so Molly.
But you like that.
No, I don't. I don't like having to have the responsibility of all of it. No,
you may not want to take on the responsibility, but there's some enjoyment you have of like figuring it all out, where I think the 6 is more like really, like, I gotta figure this all out.
Well, but I think, a 6, a 1, and a 2 are in the dutiful stance, where like that responsibility, that dutifulness of like taking that on. Maybe you don't necessarily want to do it, but that's always going to be your like.
We go there.
I'm beautiful.
So like for me, I provide that security, like Stacey is saying, because I'm going to have already thought through the details.
Right.
And even like I see that when we go to do things together, where like if there's something Molly's missed, I usually have it.
So, and I again want to bring up, the idea is to understand the box you're in so that you can break out of it. Because the idea is not to kill all spontaneity in life.
Amen.
That's not. That's also not the. That's not the goal.
I feel like if you're going to ask a 6 something, you have to have a little bit of something to offer with it to make it.
Absolutely.
You have to have bait. Yeah.
To make it more spontaneous, because if it's completely spontaneous, it's going to get shut down right away. So you got to come with something.
You have to make it more spontaneous.
Loving unwell, right?
Brandon,
Well-
maybe if you, in your eightness, maybe throw out a few more descriptive, like not just like, hey, we should do this, but like, I thought about doing this. We can do this, 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 and this. How do you feel about that as an option? Get back to me on that. But like tomorrow, will you let me know? Something like that's not like an exact time frame that could cause stress or anxiety, but like, hey, and maybe you do this, and maybe it's like something you've tried. But I'm just trying to give like peace of mind and clarity as like a husband and wife.
No, that's really good. I'll just say that we've been planning to go to my friend Phil's house for over a year now. I'll just say that. So I think we're finally going to go next weekend.
Well, I'll be honest. I understand because Molly doesn't get her hair done very often either.
Right.
Yeah.
But she's always like, just tell me when I need to get my hair done, and I'll just do it.
Yeah. So you have to make sure.
I'm trying to plan it and think about when is good timing, how to get the kids somewhere.
You have to make sure.
There's just so much involved.
There is. Being a mom, for real, it is always a lot of thinking. Like that, you have to think, well, they're going to wake up. They're going to need this. They're going to need this. They may need this. Well, then if they want to go outside, they're going to need this. And then if we go here, and then you're like, never mind. It's going to be better just do a staycation.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was going to say like that for Brandon or anyone talking to the 6, like if you have kids, like the first core fear is the kids, as Molly said. So if you first address that as part of your question, even like, let's do this, but I've thought about, here's what we're going to do with the kids. Like I've already thought through like that part of it. Like I think that would go a long way, because that's like.
And another thing that's huge for a 6 is like the common good. Like always thinking of everybody involved and what is best for everybody. So like in respects to like my family, I'm not going to make a decision. Like we have we have a baby to consider. Like I'm not going to decide to like go do something at 7 o'clock at night when the baby didn't nap that day and she's going to fall apart and, like want to go to bed, like something like that. Like I can't, it has to be for everybody's best interest and like the common good of all the people involved. I feel that way often too.
Yeah.
Like
it's
Brandon,
very.
you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Because this is really hard to say.
I also have something to say after you get
Those things can be used though. It's like, yes, that is very true, but then also it's like the kids can be used as an excuse sometimes, as like, I don't have all the information. Wait, Beta, but instead of saying that, she's just like, well, Beta hasn't slept in. There was 5 minutes off that she didn't sleep today, so we're not doing that. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like one day out of 365, she's going to grow to her full potential physically. Mentally, this will not destroy her brain cells.
we're all going to be fine.
She's going to wake up tomorrow. And I was just telling her today, like, if you never like do something, like you'll never have those stories of like something went sideways, and you'll never have those stories because you never tried anything or took a risk. Like and I'm not saying take a risk.
That's true. That's valid.
It's hard. And then another thing with baiting them to go somewhere, you have to make sure that you have the energy to fully debate, because it's like, if you don't have your energy stores up and they go through this like huge list, and you got to constantly be like, well, okay, yeah, here's the answer to that. Yeah, we do that. But if you don't, you're just like, oh, forget it.
Yeah.
We don't have to go.
You have to be prepared for a discussion with the 6. Like you have to be fully engaged and willing to have a discussion.
So true. And here's the other piece, and I have to remind my sweet husband about this often. The idea is not to get everybody on board with your perspective. Your perspective is your perspective. Yeah. The idea is to be open to hearing the other person's perspective and you guys moving forward on what that looks like
Reminder.
together. So it's not, the point is not, I want to get you to start thinking like a 6.
Can you give me like a quote? Like say that again and just give us like a quote that we can like post somewhere. Like
she said, the idea is not to get you thinking like
I'm gonna make it into a stencil and paint it all over the house.
Yeah.
The idea is not to get you thinking like me. It's me, right? Is that? I mean, that's
like the whole point of all of this thing is
it's not for you to be me. It's for me to be me and for you to be you. That's the idea.
Well, it's to grow out of.
It's so that we can move together and get understanding. But it's not for me to sit here and convince you on how to be a better one, because I'm a 1. And if you just be a better one, we wouldn't have this conversation.
And Brandon can pull you out of that, Molly, because he can stretch you to
That's
your
point. Yes, that's the point.
You have to trust him to take on that responsibility and know that he won't fail you. And even if he does fail you, that he loves you and it wasn't an intentional hurt.
There you go.
Exactly. Like your family is going to be the greatest point of helping you stretch because they're already safe. Like you reminding yourself, like these are safe people, you know, and whether it's friends, family, like knowing you're safe people, what they suggest, they know me well, they love me well. And to Stacey's point, they're going to help me to stretch, which is always going to be uncomfortable.
Right.
But that's going to be positive growth. So like, but also what Stacey said before, Brandon offering like, here's what I've thought of for you. It validates that he recognizes you're going to be concerned about these things.
Right.
Or like me suggesting, let's go somewhere, saying, hey, I know Veda's a little crazy. What can we do to make this a positive experience for you, but not keep your girls from experiencing life?
Right. Being willing to have that conversation. Yeah.
As like a husband and wife, it's so important to have good trust between like mutually, but like it's so important to have that trust and respect and honoring their opinions and their responsibilities in the marriage to lead. Yeah. And I think it's hard when you have all those fears and those things that come up, but like letting them take on something that maybe it wouldn't be what you would do, but like letting them do something to what it's still a good thing. Like it still all works out fine. That's your husband. He is your number one like person in your life that you can trust, and you have to give them opportunities to trust them in order to like really have a good bond. Like I feel like we've learned a lot with like giving each other like things to do, and it's like, okay, I wouldn't have done it that way, but you did it, and I'm really glad that you did it, and we're here together doing life together. And like you're stretching me, I'm stretching you, we're vulnerable with each other, and that's hard, but it's uncomfortable and good all at the same time.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And that is a growth point for me personally. Absolutely. Like being relaxed enough to give him even the opportunity to fail.
Yeah.
You know, like not needing to be in control as much, because that's important, like for a husband, like to let them lead.
Yeah.
Even if, you know, and as an 8, like if he's feeling one little bit of being controlled, he's like, I'm out of here. I'm done.
Well, it would make me feel a lot closer to her. Like if that's how teams are made, by being vulnerable. Like you can't truly ever become. And that's what I was saying to her the other day. Like we got to do more trips where it's just us as a family, because you have to go through those like unexpected things that happen during the trip. Right?
Yeah.
And those are the memories, and those are the trusting memories you go back to.
Yeah. Like, hey, we got through it.
Hey, Molly, how are you feeling about going away next weekend? Because I know how Bob gets the week before. So are you going to actually go away next weekend?
I'm going to go away. I feel like I have all the information.
Okay. And also the one thing I was going to say with, you know, like even if something goes wrong, like because we've traveled a lot over the years, like those are the best things that happen actually, because they're the most bonding, because you have to work together to get something fixed. So like even if it goes wrong, even if it wasn't in one of those safety questions you had, it will be good in the end, you know, because Brandon will come in on his white horse and fix whatever for that.
And giving over some of that to him to take on that responsibility will give you a lot of peace, a lot of light. Once you feel that you can trust him because you've given him enough opportunity that he actually does want to take on that responsibility. Like
Right.
me, a lot of things, like letting him do things, even like when the kids were little, I'm like, I need you to be home at this time so I can leave for work. Like I need you to do that because I can't work. And like me, like saying, okay, he's got it. I'm at work. I don't know if what he's doing, but he's got it. And it's good because like they were fine. They survived. They had a good time. They probably had a better time with him than they would have with me. To be
Right.
honest, like at the end of the day, I'm not the most fun person. So I'm like, good.
That's so true. Yeah.
So let's talk about this slide, and then I'll give you guys a break real quick. So these are the subtypes of the 6, okay? I think I heard you maybe talking, Bob, you're probably closer to this one, is it? You were kind of talking through the self-preservation 6, right? Again, responding to perceived threats and needs are more important to them. Their subtype key is warmth. They are the family loyalists. The anxiety of this 6 blends with the self-preservation instinct to make fear and insecurity a theme for this cautious subtype, okay? To feel safe, they build strong alliances and relationships with others. They are sincerely affectionate and warm-hearted in their interactions. They repress anger and are hesitant to share opinions for fear that it may cause issues or risk mistakes happening. So they're very cautious. They're very laid back in that they don't necessarily like to rock the boat, so to speak. So they almost sometimes may even feel like a 9, where they're just kind of like, sure, whatever you want to do. They're very compliant and dutiful. Okay. Social subtype of a 6. Subtype key, duty, the social guardian. They feel like they need to connect to social ideals, working for a cause, or standing up for the weak. They tend to be more black and white versus the shades of gray seen by other 6s. So it's either this or that. They may seem like an Ennea 1 as they are precise and careful and prefer to follow rules and procedures. And again, that's for their own safety and security of themselves and for others around them. They're highly rational and very compliant, okay? They work to encourage compliance to the rules and to collective norms. They're very groupthink. So it's very, hey, if we all do this, we'll all be safe and we all won't have a problem. So everybody just follow what I'm saying and just do this. And they ensure that everyone knows what is expected, okay? Here's what we're going to do. Here's the schedule. Follow it, and nothing bad will happen, okay? And then lastly, you have the 1-to-1. Again, like I was saying to Jess, commonly known as the counter type, not always. Their subtype key is intimidation. Again, they kind of look like an 8, viewed as the warrior. They tend to be bold, assertive, and even intimidating, which may lead to mistyping as an 8. The sexual 6 is counterphobic, believing the best defense is a good offense and reacting towards typical 6 fears by running towards them or any type of danger that may be in front of them. This head-on approach may appear rebellious or something of a daredevil, okay? They need to feel strength and safety because it makes it difficult to connect to their doubts or their feelings of invulnerability. So they run towards that in order to escape that and say, no, I'm not. I really am not scared and I'm not really fearful. So I'm going to run towards it and I'm going to externalize what I have to say, my feelings, etc. That way people don't see their fearfulness or their anxiousness. Molly, which one do you think you are? Social guardian?
I think I'm social.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. I was thinking social or self-preservation, but no. Okay, yeah, I think social.
You're social. I know, Bob, I saw that you were self-preservation.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Can I ask a quick question? Molly, when you were talking before about, like, after reading all these types, when you were talking before about how, like, the group thinking, were you saying that, like, can you explain that again? Like, thinking of the best. What's that?
Me or Molly?
Molly. She said something about, like, feeling like the group overall good for the group. But then that was when Brandon said, like, you gave the example of, well, I have a baby. And then Brandon said, well, yeah, but we don't always have to follow in line for the baby. Like, I was wondering if what you meant was that you need in your mind, like you need to work on what's good for everyone and not just what you're focusing on, or if you're saying you think everyone needs to look at that. Like, can you explain what your thought process was on that through the eyes of a 6?
Wait, are you asking that?
She's asking, why did you say
yes
for you to go on a trip, it's not only just what it is for our family, you also like to take into account what's good for everyone.
Okay. No, not what I'm asking. Sorry.
No.
I said it wrong. So you said especially with, I said it wrong. I'm sorry. Like you said, especially with family, that your mind goes to the overall good. But then the example that you gave was like in bedtime or eating, whatever it was, like keeping in mind that there's the baby. Were you saying that you feel like everyone should look at that, or that you need to look more at everyone?
I think I was saying that everybody needs to look at that.
Look at the kid.
Like everybody.
Right. So that's not inclusive, right?
I don't know.
No, it's not. Because if you're the
Brandon gets what I'm saying.
I don't get it.
if you're the social guardian and you're taking everybody into account, then you wouldn't be like, well, Veda can't stay off.
Okay, I get it now.
What you're seeing, I think that's what I was getting at, is I think the way you expressed it, you were thinking that everyone else was not thinking about the one thing you were thinking of, and therefore
No. I did use that as an example, but I actually am thinking of everybody in the group. Like I was just giving that one example, like this is one thing I'm thinking about this person as an example, but like collectively assessing, like, is this a great decision for everybody?
Okay.
So just a bad example. It was just
So feeling like not everyone was considering that. Yes or no?
I don't really care what other people are considering. I'm just considering.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, did that answer that?
I got that from the beginning. That's why I'm like,
I think that was the point.
Okay.
I just want, I want y'all to know that I'm thinking about everybody else and what that looks like as well. Not only when I'm making my decisions about my family, but the whole general.
Yeah. But so in that, do you honestly believe that you're looking at everyone else?
Technically, she's not. To answer your question, you're leading.
Well, no, I don't know if she sees that or not. If she, I don't know if in their minds, like that is inclusive. So that's why it was an honest question. It really didn't mean it to be leading.
So, I feel like with her, maybe it's more of a thing where she has an inner circle, and to her, she's staying true to that inner circle.
There's just a constant, like, for a 6 in general, like a constant scanning of like assessing every situation.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Oh, I'd be so exhausted.
It is. Well, okay.
Hypervigilance. That's the word.
Where did I hear this? A 6 is like a duck floating in a pond, just like floating along. But like what's happening is what's under the water. Like it's just constant. Their feet. Like it's just constant. It's exhausting.
That is good.
So it helps with your security when we peek under the water and like try to scan that for you in advance.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that can be the 6's downfall too. Like I look okay on the surface, but there's all this stuff always happening. And it's not, I don't have to try. It's just happening. Right. I don't have to like think about it. Just thinks for itself. Yeah. The inner committee.
So you're thinking of what everybody else also has to do in order for that all to happen? Is that what you're saying? Like you're worried, like if your mom and your sisters were going and you guys, you're like, okay, well my mom's gonna have to do this, this, and this, and then Jess is gonna have to do this with that. Is that what you're saying, or no?
I do think of that, but then for me, if I don't see that other people are thinking of what might need to be prepared, then it's my responsibility to do everything.
Yeah, so if we do this a lot, we'll drop the kids off, and she has an internal list like this long, but she'll be like, so if they didn't state it to them, like she's like, you need to feed the kids at 5:15, you need to, right? Like every time we drop them off, like we've dropped them off 1,000 times, and she still goes through the list. I'm just like, and Emily will just be sitting.
They eat at 5.
Okay, see ya. Have a good time. Love ya.
So I'll definitely do that too, Molly. Like I'm definitely like somebody like when I go on vacation, like I gotta like write the dog person a list of what times and like the kids, my mom. I'm like, okay, I packed like 450 things.
Yeah.
Don't forget to use it for all the things that it's supposed to be used for.
So my question is why?
But she does this when
Because I don't trust that they'll do it because they have let me down before.
Yeah, but what if they don't do it?
My kid's hair turns green. It's crunchy. I have to fix it. I have more work on my part.
Yeah.
My kids are
So really, you're only telling them these things for selfish reasons.
Yeah.
Sure, I guess. But these kids are my selfish, loved kids that deserve this.
They're your responsibility.
They're my kids, and I want them to be like how I've raised them. They're very important, right?
There's nothing more infuriating to me when I tell somebody like, please do this or don't do this because of X result, and they don't listen and X result happens. Like, I just wanna like.
Well, and I'm not even to the point where I'm like, so like, if you don't do it at this exact time, it's like, I can go a little bit more reserved and be like, I'm going to give you this because it makes me feel better. But if you follow the general, it will make your life easier because this is what they're used to. If you don't, you may get a lot more flack. You may have like cranky kids. Their bellies could hurt because you gave them too much junk and they're not used to it. Like, I'm trying to make it easy all around. Like that I'm not going to be anxious. They're going to have an easy, fun time, and that everybody is good.
Everybody, and that's that collective, like, for everybody's good. Like, I very much, that's definitely a 6 thing, for sure. Yeah.
What number are you again, Stacy?
She's 7, but she has a 6 wing.
Okay, no wonder. Okay. Like
7. I got both wings. Every once in a while, I go 1, I go 5.
Something that I find interesting from the 5 perspective of thinking of the 2 wings the 5 have, the 4 and the 6. Like I can identify very much with like the scanning, trying to bring in information, but the fact that I'm such a much more 4 wing, that the fear attached to all of that is what's interesting to me. It's like I very much can identify with that, like scanning and bringing in information, but I don't have fear attached to it. And I'm more motivation. And it seems to me like from the 5 perspective, the 4 with the 4 wing is more like you have the empathy going out to other people, and the 6 is more the fear that's like driven inside. So it's like the difference between like feeling for others and the fear inside me can kind of controlling. So like
that's where the projections come from.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to have grace with a 6 too when it comes to the list thing, because you can feel like they don't trust you, and then if you have a complex about feeling dumb or stupid, you'll be like, I've seen people. I don't mean to keep bearing my brother up, but like she's explained stuff to him, and you can see it in his face, like because he has an inadequacy with feeling like people view him as dumb or not intelligent, and so like when she does that to him, he's just like, oh my gosh, like she really does think I'm dumb, like. That I can't figure this out. I've seen it, so.
But I think that also comes down to like we still need to be. Not every human is of who we are, and like we don't need to feel like rely on other people's feelings to make us who we are. If we're not a strong human from within with what God's telling us, we can't help what other people what their feelings are. And I realize that like can be in a bubble, and I can talk about this to like Christians and good friends, but then I get out in the real world and deal with other people at work, and I'm like, whoa, they are not at all receptive to anything I have to say. They are stuck in their bubble. They don't want out. Their way's the right way. And I'm like, okay, I love you. Have a great day.
That's so good. Stuck in their own bubble. That's a good way of putting it, which is what we're all reaching not to be, right? Stuck in our number, stuck in our bubble.
But not everybody is reaching not to be.
And the point is not to also pull people inside your bubble.
Right. Right.
Like a lot of people don't want to be uncomfortable because they have fear, right? Like that's what this pandemic and everything has done. There's so much fear. So then there's so many more emotions rather than thinking level-headed, rather than being kind when they say something, or maybe withholding saying something because it can be hurtful. Like all that kind of processes in all of that.
Or trying to be forceful in like your opinion or
yeah,
all of it. That's so true, Stace.
That's a really good analogy about the not trying to get out of your bubble and not pulling people into your bubble. Like that really resonates.
Yeah.
Some people are just running around popping everybody's bubbles.
Bubble
popper. I personally think everybody should be growing always, and we should always be a little bit uncomfortable and open to other people's opinions, still staying true to your internal insides, but like being open to hear other people's opinions. Like I talk to so many different people with so many different views, and I have to be more generalized. I don't like to be opinionated. I like to sit back and listen, and I've gotten a lot of that in recently because I've been back to work. But it's been really good to see other people's outlooks, and like even just knowing more about the Enneagram, knowing more about myself, just like dealing with some of the people in the salon that like are completely different than me. And it's okay. Like, I'm like, okay, I see it that way. And if that's where they're comfortable, they're not willing to stretch too far. If they can just stretch just a tiny bit, that's great. But if they don't, there's only so much that I can do, but I can still be an example of who I am and hope that they see it in love. But if they don't, I can't help it either.
Yep.
Like, I can't hold on to that as an anxiety, or I need to help that person. Some people don't want to be helped.
Nope. All right. Good discussion. Stacey, you get the gold star for today.
Man.
Good job.
Because I did a yoga class this morning, guys. I feel so good.
It's like all these weeks have like bubbled up. So it came to this.
I've been talking a lot. I've been getting it all out.
Good job.
So close. I'm not trapped anymore, guys. I'm not trapped.
You went to therapy.
Coming out of your bubble.
Not in my bubble. Hallelujah.
So let's take 5 and come back, and then we'll finish wrapping up.
Stacey, where'd you do yoga? At home or at a studio?
No, I went to, that's why I was late. I went to North Park Lounge, the back, whatever, the Cabana Bar or whatever. They had like a little yoga class. There's only like a few of us there. A couple of the neighbor girls went, and I didn't think that I'd be able to go, and then we ended up being able to go. So we just rode over there. And
oh my gosh, how fun!
It was really beautiful morning to be outside doing yoga. And
is it a consistent thing that's being done, or is that just
I think it's from Salt Salt Power Yoga. So it's one of the trainer that was there was from, I think, Swickley, I think she said. I think they do a lot of different locations. I'm not sure if it's going to be there again or not, but I'll just keep, the app has all the, or the app or the website, I think, shows all the like out of Salt, location things. So I'll keep looking to see if they have some in different locations.
Will you let me know if you see any? I'd love to go.
I will. And it was really a good, like, I hadn't done yoga in a long time. I haven't really worked out a whole lot. So like for me, like, it was a good gentle way to start like movement again and doing some things. So
yeah, I would love to do that. Please keep me.
I will. Absolutely. And there was only like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 people all together.
Oh, wow.
It was really nice. We were all spread out, just kind of like enjoying the fresh, it's out, and the birds were chirping. It was like,
nice.
Oh, this is like so nice.
Yeah.
It was like so relaxing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I have not worked out in way too long, and I feel it all over.
That was me too, but like, I just needed to not work out in general because it wasn't helping me. I'm just trying to walk and randomly, not even consistent, but it's better than nothing. But even like just the like stretching out that many times and like standing in those poses, I'm like, I'm actually shaking. This is kind of embarrassing, but I'm glad I'm doing it.
I would be too. I was at the playground actually with Harper and Veda yesterday. My mom and I took them to a playground, and like I'm like climbing the things with Veda because she's 2 and she doesn't want to do the little kid stuff. She wants to do the big kid stuff. And I'm legitimately sore today. And I'm like, why am I sore? And it wasn't until like a little bit ago that I'm like, it's that stinking playground. That's ridiculous that I'm this sore.
I know. I'm like, okay, I gotta seriously start doing something again. Like, even if it's just like squats, or like, a couple push-ups.
Right.
I don't even know.
I know. But yeah, the stretching is so good because then it's getting your muscles ready for that.
Right. It felt
really good. Before we
okay.
wondered the same thing.
We heard the crash.
What is happening?
It was Jess's that was lit when that noise happened.
What are you doing? Jessica, what are you doing? Are you alive?
Jess, you okay? Brad, you okay?
Somebody say something.
She was beating me with a metal spoon.
Are you okay?
That's a big spoon.
Blink twice if we need to send help.
That was a big.
It was the rack in the microwave fell.
Oh,
Is that you?
You
Yeah.
sure? Are you sure? Are you here? Look in the camera. Blink twice if it was really the microwave.
Jessica said she's upstairs. That's her defense.
Or blink once if you need help.
I am gushing blood that you just can't see.
Wow.
I'll tell you what, that assembled everybody back here pretty fast. That's
Name-
better than a little bell.
name that noise.
Name that noise.
The noise was Brad being in a domestic violence opportunity.
I was taking my aggression out.
Right.
Come on, let's put to death this core weakness, guys, of anxiety.
I'm listening. I'm coming.
It's going to cause you to be constantly caught up. That's what we don't want. The thinking and the planning. Constantly thinking and planning. You don't need to be constantly doing it, John. That's what you're missing. It is okay to think and plan. I obviously think and plan. But the idea is not to be in a constant state of it. That's the difference. That's what.
You're supposed to be.
No, you're not. Why?
Because if you don't have that, then
No, you're speaking, we're not talking about the same thing. You shouldn't constantly be doing it.
I wish
There's nothing-
I constantly do that.
But why?
Because it's a awareness. Like I said, I don't see that bad. I see it like I think all people should think like that. Like, okay, what if this happens? So let me do this. Let me plan this. Let me plan. Every day, you walk out the door, something can happen. So if you
can.
Right, but if you plan it, like at least you would know, like, okay.
There's nothing for you to plan besides don't walk in the middle of the street.
Yes, I understand that.
Our plan, Joni. His plan's a different plan. You have to see it both ways.
Yes.
Sure. What we won't see though, and what I won't what I won't validate is staying.
Don't you love me?
Oh no, I love you, honey.
Yeah.
We can't stay in the box though. That is not the point.
No, I'm not
So
saying
we need to put that to death. That in the word that's important there in that paragraph is constantly.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with planning and thinking things through. It's the
Overthinking. There's always a plan
overthinking.
part.
Yes,
More generalized plan
exactly.
with freedom along the way. That can allow for freedom and grace and peace to
Come
say,
on,
hey,
Sister Stacy.
it's okay if it didn't go this way. There's still an A, B, C, or D that we can do, and that's still also a good plan.
Come on, sister.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, Stace. Like we can choose to do that. Like I know if I'm going to do something, I'm going to plan, and there's these variables. Whereas Bob is trapped in it sometimes. Like it's just constant. You know, they can't get out of it. You know, whereas I have more of a choice.
Right.
And I'm becoming more aware of the choices I have to get out of it.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's like, if you really have a hard time, I think you have to say, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? Let's go there and bring ourselves back. Because sometimes it's so bad and you're like, I can't do it. But if you're like, well, the worst thing would be that I died. Well, obviously, is that really, anybody could die at any point of the day.
Exactly. You can't plan, and that's the point. You can't plan against that.
We're going to die every day. We're not going to enjoy any part of life.
Exactly.
Wow.
Well, that's why it's important to
Come on and preached on
Wow,
this
Stacey,
afternoon,
she just-
Sister Stacy, Evangelist Stacy.
She just made it clear.
Amen.
She made
Amen.
it clear. Okay.
Thank
that's
you.
why it's important for a 6 to ask like the questions to yourself first before you even like go anywhere with it. Like, is this real? Is this like probably gonna happen, or is this like completely a lie? Like, you know, you just have to, because you're constantly scanning, so then you have to be constantly assessing that, and then from there acting out of that.
And then maybe you can be like, I think for me, I always need to know what other people are thinking, even if it's just we're gonna move right past it. It's like, if you're feeling like I'm getting a little overwhelmed and anxious of all the things going on right now, like I need to take just like a minute to just like come back and like call myself and be like, okay, everything's going to be fine. This is not the worst case scenario. It's literally just planning a going out to dinner event. It's small, it's simple, everything's going to be fine. Kind of just like coming to like the calm part of wherever you can get yourself to.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so like thinking is good and planning is good, but if you're doing that too much, you're actually not able to enjoy or have fun.
Right.
And then it sets you back to isolation, and that's not healthy.
Right.
No.
Absolutely.
You want to teach the rest of the class, Sister Stace?
Sorry. I'm just so excited I got to be around people for the last week. It's just so invigorating.
Right.
You went to therapy all week long.
I know.
Therapy all week long, right?
Yeah.
And I just listened a lot.
That's right. The hidden struggle of the six. Oh, I'm sorry. Who was that? Bradley, are you okay?
I'm still bleeding, but I'm all right.
I'm sorry.
Internal bleeding.
Internal.
I was just gonna say the same thing. Like Stacy can just finish this up. Like she's
That's
got.
right. That's right.
Wow. Thanks, guys. That makes me feel good. But it's because sevens are perfect. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Okay. I ruined it.
It's because you winged that 8, but you're welcome. You're welcome. We're glad we can give you that self-confidence.
I'm back.
You said you weren't the most fun, but you're the 7. You have to be.
Right. I'm having so much fun right now. It's great.
Yes. Let's talk about the hidden struggles, the constant need for inner calm. Inner calm, that's what they've been talking about, right? To make the world feel trouble-free and predictable. Boring. Anxiety from an internal committee. Yes, that internal committee of voices constantly chiming in worst-case scenarios, contradictory thoughts and questions, making me second-guess myself and what I know. So I want to stop right there because in reading Ephesians 6 and understanding about principalities, part of principalities are speculation. And here's where this can be troublesome for a 6. And here's, to your point, probably, Molly, the people who are unsaved, let that principality take them all the way to a dark side, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where they can't come back, because if speculations is a part of lofty things, speculations, right? Those things that are spiritual warfare. And if they let speculations, which are a worst case scenario, what if this could happen? What if that could happen? That's what can overtake someone, and it's a gateway for the enemy to come on in. So that's a piece where you all have to be very careful, even as saved individuals, that you don't let that particular principality take over, because you are walking yourself through those contradictory thoughts, questioning, worst case scenario, second guessing yourself. That's where you can get pinned down. So that's a definite watch out.
Yeah.
And then lastly, the inability to think clearly and make sound decisions when the mind is always, to your point, that cloud of hypervigilance is overhead. So even for you, Molly, now that you again have brought that up, I pray against that for you and for Bob, and even for you too, Stacy, if that's something that you guys fall into, because again, that is a gateway for the enemy to have a foothold, a stronghold in your life, because we got to take captive the thoughts. So if anything, that's definitely a verse that you have to exercise in your life, that those things that are coming up that are clearly not true, right? Like you were saying, I told you to ask those 3 questions, has to be a big focal point for you. It's going to be like one of your thorns in your side. Like for me, mine is going to always be that impulsiveness to pop off, and I will say something that I didn't mean to say, and I can't. Words are toothpaste, right? Like the episode on Last Man Standing. Those are toothpaste words. Yeah. Once they come out, you can't put it back in the tube. So that's something I know I have to be very vigilant about, to ensure that even when it does come out, to Stacy's point, because you will mess up, that you have to be quick for, asking forgiveness and repenting of that. So what are you thinking, Molly? I know your wheels are turning there as I talk through this.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. And like you're saying, those principalities, like fear is a spirit. So there's that whole other level of that, the awareness of that. and the deliverance of that. And that's like the word sozo, being like saved, healed, delivered, but that's day by day. That's not like a one-time event.
Exactly.
That's every day. So like whatever you struggle with, that's day by day. It's not like, oh, you know, I dealt with that. Like, I know what it is. I'm good. Like, no, like you're gonna, it, like you said, that's your thorn in your side.
Yes.
So having that awareness of what that is for everybody. And also I think another great thing is to have your sword of the spirit to combat that.
Yes.
Because I think every number, like you're going to have one or two, a few scriptures that speak directly to that weakness.
Yes.
So like for me, it's like
in James, be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Because my wrath is fierce and will come very strong very quickly. So I was telling him yesterday, like, I sit there and don't talk and like almost like sit on my hands for a reason, to listen, because if not, then I'm going to say something that I'm not supposed to say.
Exactly. Yep.
So for my tool, my toolbox, my tool in the toolbox is active listening to help me combat my thorn in my side.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It helps me to be less impulsive. It makes me listen first versus responding.
Yeah, definitely. I think like for a 6, like the best guiding scripture is Proverbs, what is it, 3?
5 through 6. Trust in the Lord.
5 to 6, yeah.
In your heart.
Yep. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding.
In all thy ways, acknowledge him.
Yeah, like that's it. That's all you need.
That's my life verse. That's my favorite verse.
Yeah.
And I was even liking, and this, we'll do this at some point. I think on our last day, I want us to actually have a get together in person too, by the way. So, Dr. Anita Phillips was talking about how that's a good icebreaker for people to go around and say what their life verse is, and then ask people, what did they think about that? Because it does tell a lot about a person, what your favorite verse is in the Bible. And actually the one that you just mentioned, Molly, is one that's my life verse. And I think it's why I deep dive so much into wisdom and knowledge and getting an understanding, is because I know that I won't be able to stay on track if I don't. So I have to depend on what God tells me and what the word says, because otherwise I'm going to go in a whole nother direction. So it's why you will constantly hear me quoting scriptures and keeping the word before me to say what that looks like for me, myself, in my life, because otherwise I'm liable to say something real reckless.
Right. Yeah. And that's walking in faith, and like, and that's, and like for a 6, that is what combats fear. Like the opposite of fear is faith.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
You have to have that before you. And to just always be in pursuit of courage.
Yeah, exactly.
To do that.
Cast your fears.
Something's been,
Go ahead, Bob.
you know, talking about Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, these other verses that have been really standing out to me recently. This is in Ephesians 1, beginning in the verse 17.
Aha, that's what.
And it's Paul's prayer for the church. And that he says, I pray that the Father of glory, the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, would impart to you the riches of the spirit of wisdom and the spirit of revelation to know him through your deepening intimacy with him.
Yes.
I pray that the light of God will illuminate the eyes of your imagination, flooding you with light until you experience the full revelation of the hope of his calling, that is, the wealth of God's glorious inheritance that he finds in us, his holy ones.
Yes.
I pray that you will continually experience the immeasurable greatness of God's power made available to you through faith, that your lives will be an advertisement of his immense power as it works through you. This is the mighty power that was released when God raised Christ from the dead and exalted him to the place of highest honor and supreme authority in the heavenly realm. And now he is exalted as first above every ruler, authority, government, and realm of power in existence. He is gloriously enthroned over every name that is ever praised, not only in this age, but in the age that is coming. And he alone is the leader and source of everything needed in the church. God has put everything beneath the authority of Jesus Christ and has given him the highest rank above all others. And now we, his church, are his body on the earth, and that which fills him who is being filled by it.
Yep.
I need to share that.
Yep.
So.
I've been studying Ephesians for the past month and a half. So that where you started was exactly that was one of my memory verses. To keep asking God for the spirit of wisdom. And I even wrote greater revelation. And I was just talking to Molly about this yesterday, and Teresa at prayer yesterday. Just God has been revealing in so much in myself, around me, about my call, my purpose, so that I may know him better. And you're so right. And especially in Ephesians, I mean, the entire book is just about your identity and who you are in God. And like Pastor Stacy was talking about earlier, not letting others shift situations, shift opportunities, shift who you truly are. And that you're built on a foundation that was set, that was predestined. You didn't get to that birth, but we were predestined, and we were thought of already with a purpose to do the things that he's already called us to do. So I love that I've been right there. So that's just confirmation, even for me. So yes, thank you for reading that.
Well, and that's like what Molly said either, like the verse that she was saying, that God doesn't give us a spirit of fear. So that's 2 Timothy 1:7. But the rest of it says, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. I feel like those words are really what you need to not get held up on, the spirit of fear, because that could hold you down. And that is the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound, calm, peaceful mind to then, follow God's plan for your life rather than to let that fear bind you.
Yes. And that leads even right here into projection. So that sound mind is what battles projections. A sound, clear, calm mind battles projection, because you don't want that thought pattern to take over in your life, and for you to start to confuse what's my reality, or put it like this: what does God say versus what I'm thinking. Right. Well, what I'm thinking can be all kind of crazy things, but God says this, and that's what we have to stand on, and especially for a 6. Standing on your words, knowing your word, becomes very important.
He says, cast all your cares on me because I care for you.
That's right.
Dude, he didn't die on that cross for you to think about all that and to not enjoy the life that he's given you. He knows that you're going to think that, and he recognizes that, and it can be actually something that could be very beneficial for a lot of people. You can be a very good person for somebody to lean on, to guide them and direct them in that healthy state that God said, but I don't want you to be burdened by those. I died on that cross for you, so you don't have to bear them, and to find that calmness and peace in that.
Yes, because his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And the idea is that we have to give it over to him. So I think even to your point for that 6 is when you start getting flooded, to immediately, Nehemiah, quick prayer: God, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now in this moment. Take that away from me. It's not mine. I don't want it. And immediately cast that off of you. And we have that power and authority. Me and Teresa were praying about this last night. We have that power and authority as believers, and we don't exercise our power and our authority enough to say, Satan, you're under my feet. This is not from God. This is what you're trying to put in my mind, and I don't want it, and I don't need it, and it does me no good. So definitely taking that stance of power and authority. And now we roll right into stances. We're still on dutiful stances. We did 1s last week. We're rolling right into the 6s. Again, they move towards people, so they're wanting to work things out with others. So they're moving in that direction. They're seeking that security and certainty by following rules, being loyal to a trusted authority. If they don't receive that adequate security, they become more committed to proving they deserve it, or they rebel in seeking it from somewhere else. So they believe they are superior to others because of their level of dedication. And that's where that, well, I thought about all the things that were supposed to happen, and why didn't you? Like, you obviously don't care about our security and our safety here. So sometimes that can come off very judgy. The word, maybe I love Stephanie's word, judgy, onto others, and they then draw back from you, which is the opposite of actually what you want to happen, because you want people with you and by you. So sometimes that's a watch out there. They need to ask themselves, how can I satisfy the expectations others have of me? How can I be a responsible person? They believe they must be doing something to get something. They live with the oughts and shoulds, the same as the ones and twos as well, because we'll actually talk about the twos next week. And they believe they must shut down their wants and desires and comply with others to be loved and accepted. Even though, again, our love and our acceptance comes from Christ. I would even recommend that too, like even what Bob was saying. Ephesians is a good book to read, again, about identity and who you are, and I guess I would recommend that for ones, twos, and sixes. If you know, your love and acceptance doesn't come from others, it comes from God, period. And once you kind of get that in your head, you no longer look for that from others, and you no longer put pressure on others to give it to you either. And that's what you want.
Here's one thing, just to piggyback what you said,
yeah,
that I kind of was like an aha moment recently. Like, if you don't know who you are in Christ, like, you'll always to some extent fear rejection because you don't know you're fully accepted.
Right.
So if you don't know that to the fullest extent, like, you can't be vulnerable with people.
Right.
And you can only be fully vulnerable with people when you know that your love, your acceptance, your value is all in Christ, because at that point their response is, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's look at the sixes and the eights. This pair values honor, dedication, trust, and support, and it allows them to complement one another and form a deep and solid alliance. When the relationship is thriving, both partners are fiercely committed and loyal, and they harness their strengths to a benefit to one another and to make the world a more passionate and safe place. However, on the other side, sixes again can be suspicious. They can vent anxieties, and they can project onto their partner and test others. And then obviously then on the other side of that, eights can be unthoughtful, plowing over others, too literal, and over the top, even combative. So those are, again, the things you kind of have to keep in mind when in relationships with each other. We want to utilize the things that are currently on the slide there that's how you work together well, is finding those qualities and attributes and harnessing those. And again, looking inside of the other of what it is that I'm missing in my life that they have that I need, and vice versa. Okay. For the nines and sixes, although they're very different, both partners value stability, honesty, duty, and steadfastness. They complement one another well. Where the six brings loyalty, protectiveness, and motivation, the nine brings a sense of calmness, optimism, support, and unquestionable acceptance, because nines are able to see the broad spectrum. When the relationship is thriving, the pair is generous and encouraging to one another, benefiting each partner and making the world more harmonious and comfortable for others. So I talked about some of the other sides of a six, meaning venting anxieties, projecting, testing their spouse in an unhealthy way. And also the nine, if they're not supporting their spouse, can be disengaged, passive aggressive, indecisive, and or checked out. Okay. So again, paying attention to both sides, harnessing the attributes and the contributions you both bring. So approach to conflict. This is what a six does. You take a reactive and more emotional approach to resolving conflict, and you focus on the magnitude of the issue and your spouse's response to it. Your desire and priority is to give full weight to the problem and to have the opportunity to express your feelings about it. So that's what they're looking for. They're looking for you, number one, first and foremost, to basically just be an open forum. Not really looking for you to offer anything at that point, especially when they bring conflict to you. They want you to be open to hearing what they have to say, how they feel about the problem, what they feel it looks like, and then being able to fully express that. On the other side of that, misaligned with the gospel, they perceive that you alone must bear, that they must only bear the burden of what's happening and the responsibility of the conflict at hand. So they're not even coming to the table with the intention of allowing the other person or persons to even take responsibility or ownership or accountability. They're saying it's all on me. I'm the one that has to fix it. They focus on the negative possibilities, worst case scenarios, and with that, they discourage and they dishearten the partner on the other end. They then get frustrated when they perceive that the partner doesn't understand or thoroughly acknowledges, again, their emotion, validating them, the weight of the conflict and how it makes them feel. And then they believe and activate their core fear of being abandoned, without support, or being blamed. So frustrations caused mostly by their own inability to kind of rein in some of those negative or worst case scenarios, which then discourages or disheartens the partner, depending on what number their partner is, and their reaction to that. They get frustrated, and then they either, depending on what subtype they are, they either lash out if they're a counterphobic 6, or if they're a sexual 1-to-1 6. If they're a social 6, they immediately try to figure out, how do we get this together, and try to, again, group think, let's all work this out and what that should look like. Or they're the self-preservation 6, where they're kind of like, okay, well, whatever you want, but honestly, that's not how they feel. So again, you have a wide range of how the 6s may actually respond to the conflict when it's not going their way. Yes.
Wait, can you go back? Oh wait, I guess this would answer that, because okay, I'm just gonna be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. We're like, and where we recognize we're really bad at conflict, so like that's something we're really hoping to work better towards. Like that is exactly how I feel. Like scary.
Yes.
Like, okay, so then I guess the next slide, like, how do you get there? For me, obviously conflict is two-sided. So we both have to be doing our part.
Exactly.
To have healthy conflict, but like, yeah, the side of like, what do I do to not make all that happen?
Right. So this is what happens if you're unhealthy or not mindful.
We're really bad at conflict.
Yep. But on the other side of that, as a 6, and again, like I said before in the previous weeks, obviously we're just focusing on one particular number at a time. So for you to enter into conflict or significant discussions, you need to take more time to calm your thoughts and focus on the positive outcomes from the beginning. So you need to already walk yourself through those 3 questions, Molly, like we talked about in coaching. Are these things really happening? Are they not happening altogether? Or are they not real? Like, what does that look like? So you have to walk yourself through those questions. Same for you, Bob. And then you need to ask your spouse what they're thinking and feeling, and fully listen without jumping to conclusions for fear of not understanding or having enough information, like you guys talked about a little bit earlier. So you have to ask clarifying questions and allow your partner to answer without becoming defensive or suspicious, right? So the idea is, and again, this goes across the board, I need to actively listen.
Yeah.
Period. Everybody has to learn how to actively listen. If no one learns how to do any other key tool in the communication toolbox, it is to actively listen without jumping to conclusions, asking the right clarifying questions you need, and then allowing the other person to answer without interrupting or without becoming defensive. Remember your 4 horsemen, or becoming, in your case specifically, 6, suspicious that they may be trying to lead you down a scary path of unsafety. So bottling up that suspiciousness. And then lastly, you realize that sometimes your thoughts are speculations and projections and not necessarily reality. So that's walking yourself through those questions. So you need to take time to separate worst case scenario thinking, which was that inner committee meeting that you had, from what is actually true in your relationship. So just because I'm not sure about all the details about this trip Brandon wants to go on, he is my husband. He is there for me. He is providing for our family. He has our best interest in mind. He is a good guy. So I have to, Teresa pointed it out. So that is also one of the tips for yourself, and to Jessica's point for supporting the 6, is reminding them of the times things have gone well.
Right.
So remind 6s, remind yourself of when things have gone well. And that doesn't mean just because one bad thing happened during that one great trip that the whole trip was bad either. Because I know that's probably where Brandon's mind went.
I think,
Yeah.
well, like one big thing, like the biggest thing for 6 is like, don't shame them. Don't make them feel bad. Like,
yes.
What, on the other side of that, okay, what not to do, what to do. Like, encourage them to be courageous. Like, encourage them. Like, it'll be okay. Like, reassure and encourage in order to
through the reminding. Yes, and you do that through the reminding.
Yeah.
Like, remember that last time you did a great job of actually asking me questions, and we figured it out, and we went and we had fun.
Right.
I think that would help out a lot more than just blatantly trying to encourage, because when I encourage, it comes off to her, I feel like, as if that's me disqualifying her feeling.
Yes.
She's like, yeah, but you don't understand. Like, you're not taking the time to understand my fear. And I'm just like, yeah, it'll be okay. Like, trying to be a cheerleader, but it's
no, don't be a cheerleader. Be an active listener and respond appropriately. So whatever she brought forth, respond about that.
Yeah.
Does it feel like you're trying to convince her or like encourage her?
both.
Both. For
Okay.
6 is both. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and another, like, if something goes wrong while we're doing something new, I just automatically write it off. Like, we're not going to do this again. And then I know she's not going to go do this again.
Yeah.
I think it's more whoever, like, it's more my partner's response to what goes wrong.
Yeah.
Versus
so you can't assume that
actually-
she's going to have a reaction though, Brandon.
Right.
In order to help her grow out of her misaligned.
And and here's how you relate to your 6 in conflict and how you support them. Is ask if they want to discuss the issue now or if they need time to process their thoughts. Mm-hmm. Remain calm as they share their perspective, okay? Because this is going to help them to not feel targeted, blamed, or abandoned.
Yeah.
So be present, be calm, and listen, okay? Listen first, reassuring them before offering any response. Listen first, validate, then clarifying questions, and then your opinion and or your perspective in that order.
Mm-hmm.
Share your loyalty and love by being warm, understanding, and supportive, and that's that reminding. I'm here for you. I get you're going to ask those questions and wonder about how this trip is going to function. Help me understand how we move forward and what that looks like for you. That's the response they're looking for. I validated that they have concerns, and I gave them space to process.
Mm-hmm.
And then rebuild broken trust, because we have relationships that have now broken trust, right? And you two kind of even mentioned that a little bit, Molly and Brandon. By remembering security is their core desire. So be consistent, trustworthy, committed, and true. So be that loyal person that they know, even though they might bring their craziness to the table, you're going to stay at the table. And you're not going to walk away from the table. And you're going to sit there in it, and you're going to let them feel with all their feelings. And then it's similar to the 4, who's knocked out, by the way, now. He's in his narcoleptic coma as of.
I love it. I think it.
So, like with my honey John, I have to let him go on his emotional ride roller coaster, and then when he gets back, I have to be here.
Right.
I can't abandon him and be like, okay, see, you're doing too much. I'm not trying to deal with all that. I have to be like, okay, are you done? Are you
right?
Better? Okay, now let's talk about this.
But for a 6, they're not always going to explain how they're feeling.
Well, here's another thing I was just gonna say. I think it's super important to, like, in the understanding part, to understand if they're actually feeling anxious and fearful. Because I feel like sometimes I'm not feeling anxious and fearful. I'm being very rational. Like, I asked myself my 3 questions. Like, I really am coming at something in a very aligned way, but I'm totally dismissed because he's like, you're just afraid. Like, that's stupid.
But that's combated by listening first.
Exactly. The listening and the understanding and asking, like, are you feeling anxious about this? Are you feeling like
asking clarifying questions?
The clarifying questions. And that goes for anybody. That's not just a 6 thing. That goes for anybody. Because then that's just a aside at that point.
Yes. And that's the resisting the urge, Brandon, to do what all 8s do, which is here's where Dwayne has troubles, and I talk to him a lot about, is 8s do think really fast. So, and we even really did think about what it was that you said. And we've already processed it, and our processor in our head is running at what everybody would like their Wi-Fi to be at, right? If we could take the 8's thinking and harness that into Wi-Fi, I think the world would be in a better place. So technically, we have, like, thought about it, and we're already down the road, and we're like, you're all the way back here, and it's like, can't you see that this don't make sense, and we're already, like, right here. So that is, Brandon, where you have to resist the urge. And I tell this with Dwayne a lot because it's funny, 1s, 2s, and 6s. Autumn is a 2. We struggle with that a lot to let other people catch up to where we already are and were 15 minutes ago. Yeah. We already got there. So, and we have to be cognizant that everybody doesn't see, because I heard you say this earlier, we will actually think through all of those scenarios, and we have already thought about all those things, and we've assessed the risk, and we see that it is a low RPN number, right? Like, our risk priority number is very low for all of those different scenarios. Here is the growth for the 8, is to sit and not talk and just listen, and then respond appropriately.
Because you'd then be building trust that Molly will have for you because you've given her that time.
Exactly.
Like, she needs for you to listen and feel heard and understood before she then feels the safety to trust you. Yeah. I mean, right? Is that right? Is it correct?
Yeah.
And not necessarily trust you, because I don't want you to be like, Molly don't trust you.
Well, I'm just saying hypothetically, like, husband, wife.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying just you in general, if that's even happened. I'm just saying in general, I feel like that's something you need to be heard. I feel like I'm the same way. I need to be heard and understood, and like that you actually care of what I thought. We assess it together, and then we move forward together, having that general understanding, knowledge, grace for each other to then make the next step.
Right. Yeah. So true.
What do you think about that, Brandon? Is that a struggle point?
Yeah.
I agree. I have it too. I have it too. And here's how even more we can support our spouse's type. Be honest, be clear, be direct in our communication. That's a little bit about what Bob was saying. Like, come to us with information, being clear, being honest. Help them feel secure by being committed, hardworking, responsible, trustworthy. That's kind of a recurring theme here. Demonstrate you're a safe person with whom they can share concerns without judgment. So listen patiently, and that's probably the biggest piece. Listening patiently to their perspective without forcing them to be optimistic. So show empathy, support, and understanding of their struggles with anxiety due to that hypervigilance they got going on inside their head. Remind them that God is their loyal protector, and here's that reminding piece of, yes, how God views it, and remind them of the good things that have happened previously before. And encourage them when you see them growing and trusting that God will give them the clarity, courage, and strength. And that's a little bit what Molly was talking about. So encouraging them, meaning encouraging them with specific encouragement. I seen you do this. I saw you make a decision about, so don't generalize it. They don't want generalities. Similar to an 8, we don't like flattery. Don't just tell me I'm doing a great job. Like, tell me what it was I actually did a great job at. So be specific in your feedback. And again, think about this. We do this at work. Like a boss that gives good feedback tells them what they actually did well, not just a general, hey, good job. Like, good job doing what? So think through being more specific in your feedback and in your observations with your spouse. So create that rapport by appreciating their attention to the problems. Say, I'm so glad I have you in my life to think about why we could have died in that canoe this weekend, because I so didn't think about that, but I really appreciate that you did. And agree that we're going to wear them life jackets, even though the water is only 3 feet deep, but that's fine. We're 5 feet tall, but it's okay. We're going to wear those life jackets because that's the right thing to do. Okay? So appreciate their attention to those problems. Agree on the rules and procedures. Try to avoid changing the rules abruptly too. So we can't decide on the whole plan of action and then we get there and you totally try to change it up. That's not going to work. So follow the process. Withholding information or discounting their concerns, obviously we'll send them on a tailspin, but join them in acknowledging what could go wrong before moving ahead. And that's just that validation. It's a validation. To handle conflict, put your cards on the table. Meaning, again, don't be ambiguous or try to leave out information. Challenge them to take responsibility for their own reactions, though, right? Instead of coming up with external reasons. So tell them to walk themselves through asking themselves those questions, reminding them that they do things well. You've seen them do things well. We can do more things. So refuse just to take on their projections and brush it off or, wipe it under the rug. When they feel threatened, they may be antagonistic or they may withdraw due to that 5 wing. At times they're just testing others to see, will they be trustworthy? Will they be loyal? Will they not abandon me? Will they stay? That's what they're doing. They shouldn't really do it, but that's what's happening. So this is more of an understanding of what's happening, and that's where we find that grace and compassion. So support their growth and help them to face their fears directly. Given those reality checks, asking for personal support, 6s, this is what you need to be doing. Also, when possible, get them to see the humor in some of their shenaniganery, because that's what it is sometimes. It is shenanigans sometimes. Provide enough safety, though, to get them to relax so that their mental scanning can be at ease, right? And more into their bodies and their feelings and less out of their head. Okay? They have a thinking imbalance. So remembering those stances too, they have a thinking imbalance. In the end for you, 6, to grow, sustain faith in other people, perspective that life is dynamic and not static. You got to learn how to be more flexible and adaptable because that's just life. Change is here to stay, right? It won't be trouble-free. You're still responsible to live your life and be accountable while change is happening. So learn to get out of your head into your body. These are some things for you to read later. Learning to be more present in your anxiety and exploring it. So don't be afraid of it. I know that's kind of counterintuitive. Don't be afraid of your fear. Explore your fear. Be aware of your pessimism because you got it. That's that worst case scenario. Learn to identify what makes you overreact. And that's where I tell people, pay attention to your activations and your triggers. That's the only way you're going to learn how to stay out of that box of unhealth. And then work on becoming more trusting, and that your fears tell you more about your attitudes. This is key, 6s. Your fears tell you more about your attitudes towards others than they actually indicate about the other people. So that's a big piece for you to pay attention to.
Can you repeat that, Jenny? That was good.
Your fears tell you more about your attitudes towards others than they actually indicate about the other people. So that again goes back to that first one. Learn to be more present to your anxiety and explore it. It's more about you than it is about them.
That's really good.
So ask yourself self-affirming questions, be courageous and trust in them, remain endearing, friendly, playful, witty, continue to be yourself in those things that you do well and that you have strengths in. Treat everyone, including yourself, as equals. Fiercely commit to your communities, your homes, your family. Strive to build that stability and security because, again, these are your strengths. This is what you do well. Advocate for those who are powerless. That's something you like to get into. Take anxieties and securities first to God and trust that He will be sovereign and His timing will be what they need to be in your life so that you don't have to control all that's happening with you. Okay. So let's hop into it. And you guys can go at the same time as I ask these, Bob and Molly. Let's hear a little bit about you. So what's something that resonates most with your type that you guys have gotten out of this? Molly, you can go first, then Bob.
I think the biggest takeaway is how vital it is to like just be utterly dependent on Holy Spirit and like submit daily and like constantly pursuing faith, constantly checking in, like, am I trusting God? Because if I'm not trusting God, then I can't trust myself and I can't trust the people around me.
Yep.
So like it all starts with trusting God and it's going to trickle down from there.
What do you think, Bob?
Yeah, I agree with Molly with that. Holy Spirit's number one, and He has to be number one all the time in every situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then then I can live life free and enjoy life in the moment wherever I am.
Yeah. So what do you think you bring to a relationship, Bob?
Consistency. Encouragement. Sensitivity.
Okay.
Those
are good.
I guess empathy at times. Just growing up without a dad. A lot of people have dads and don't have a relationship with them. It's almost the same thing. And I try to encourage them to try to work things through and appreciate their dads because they're vital.
Yeah. How about you, Al?
I think when like in a safe space, a 6 can be a really good listener. And just kind of very committed, like all in and very, very steadfast and consistent. And I think that's important to bring to a relationship because not all people are naturally that way. But I think it's very easy for me to be that way.
Okay. And what are you looking for in a relationship?
I think kind of that same thing, like looking for consistency actually.
Okay.
And understanding and security and definitely that encouragement of courage, I think would probably be the biggest thing.
Okay. You're looking to be encouraged to be more courageous. Okay.
Yeah.
How about
because
you?
I think just tend to doubt themselves so much, like that's so highly important.
Yeah, that makes sense. Bob, what about you? What are you looking for when it comes to relationships?
Encouragement. Just the acceptance of love, support, safety. Also, just to be able to say how I feel about something, for them to just hear me, and to know I'm accepted.
Okay.
I belong, type of thing.
Okay. Well, you kind of answered the next one on how you prefer to be loved a little bit. do you think you want to add any more to that?
No, I think that's pretty much it that I can think of at this point.
Okay, Molly?
I definitely agree with those things. Another thing, because nobody is going to be like perfectly safe and consistent in your life, like perfectly. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But then, so one important aspect of that is like to rebuild when that trust is going to get broken. But how important it is to rebuild that trust when that does happen.
Okay.
So forgiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The security of knowing, like, when things do go sideways, like, we're going to repair it. We're going to fix that.
Okay.
You know, move forward in a more consistent way, hopefully.
Yeah.
How do you,
go ahead.
I think that, like, steadfastness gives to security, which then gives to love, in my mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say that again, Molly.
Steadfastness gives to security, which gives to love. 206.
You have to watch out, because sometimes I think maybe if a 6 is unhealthy, I'm not sure, but if they had a bad experience with that conversation, in order to repair it, you have to have that conversation again.
You have to be vulnerable.
And they don't want to have that conversation again because it didn't turn out so hot last time you had that conversation. So sometimes you get stuck in a stalemate if you're not aware of.
So that's stonewalling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Stonewalling.
That's
and so don't forget to, you know, if any of those, go back to that, I think it was week 5, and print out that slide, because there's remedies under each one of those.
Mm-hmm.
So when you find yourself in any one of those blockages, contempt, defensiveness, stonewalling, or criticism / complaint, look at, how do I get out of that? How do I get out of that? Because if I don't get out that loop, we'll be in the loop.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So how are you misunderstood, Mom?
I think we already kind of talked about this, but I think in our reactions to our anxieties, like why we think what we're thinking, or why we are doing what we're doing, like a 6, like they're acting out of already deciding a course of action in their head. Like they've already run through it in their head.
Right.
And I think others misunderstand that. And also if a 6 cannot come to that vulnerability, then others can't have that understanding. So I just think it's so important to like take the time to listen, to understand why a 6 is doing or feeling the way they're feeling, validate it, and then you can move forward.
That makes sense. Bob, you agree with that or think different?
What come to mind was decision-making time. You know, we take longer to make a decision about things, and 8s, 9s, when it's done now, you know, and we just have to have that safety.
Yeah.
You know, all those criteria met, or most of them, and then we can go, okay, we can do this.
Then I can get on board. And again, I bring up my mother. It is so important though, because when I do give her the opportunity to process and to go through all of whatever it is she has to go through, 9 times out of 10, I get her to move on board and we move forward with things. And I just know that that's just how I have to deal with her. I know I can't surprise, and I can't put anything on her at last minute, or unless again, they're working more in a healthy state. I know for her, she's average to unhealthy. So I know for her, I have to do that. When she is more in a growth state, I don't have to worry so much about that. So for instance, you see how much more open, if you had watched one of the podcasts yet with my family, when she's with family, she's more like, yeah, sure, let's go do that, guys. Absolutely. Let's go over here. Like, she don't ask 50,000 questions, which is her normal, she's like, sure, let's go do that. Like, so I've seen her in, to Brandon, to your point, I think it probably does depend on who it is around. And heck, I'm her daughter, right? But when she's with her sisters and her brothers, she's like, let's go to the flea market, and let's go do this and let's go do that. And like, she's fully open to all of that. So I've noticed that about her as well. So I think too, it does depend on, and it probably is a trusted factor, not a trust factor, because Molly trusts you. It's a trusted factor of, I no longer have to rehearse that whole, is my brother not going to protect me, or this, that, and the third. I already know he's going to do that. I already know, I can 100% know that that's going to happen, and I don't have to worry about that. And they do literally become that different person, right? That sure, absolutely, let's do this.
Well, I was just gonna bring that up. Like, that's true growth right there. And I was gonna say, what do you, as a person? So this is hard. Like, so. You know, like when you ask God, like, give me more patience, he just doesn't like sprinkle it on top of your head and say, you have more patience now. He gives you an opportunity to exercise your patience. So like, when I'm like, hey, want to go here? It's something little. Like, it's not that I'm going to do that every time, but should I give her the opportunity to trust me?
Yes.
Like, do you want to go get ice cream?
Yes.
That's all I say. But maybe like a year, 5 years from now, and I think we've established more trust, I'm like, hey, you want to go here next weekend? And then if she asks me more clarifying questions, then I'll be like, yeah, I already had those ready for you. Yeah, here you go. But until then, maybe just be, you know, I'm not going to give them to her up front. But like, in order to grow and stretch her a little more, maybe I should, like, over time, I'm not saying now, but like, you know what I mean? Like, when do you got to kind of just feel that out, I guess.
Well, here's the thing. I think you do, to your point, I like the way you put it. I would start small. So, Molly, there should be very little reason why you should decline ice cream, right?
There is no reason.
I'm sure she can probably come up with 50,000 reasons why, but here's, if he's working towards your growth and trying to support you by bringing to you small things to do, such as that, where you have to have that self-leadership to say, okay, I see that he's trying to build that trust and build that connection where it's like, you know, where we can eventually, to his point, get to, you know, he might mention something Wednesday for next Wednesday.
Right.
So that's where I'm meeting, our bubbles are coming close together.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's stepping out of his bubble to ask, even though in his mind, let's just keep it real, Brandon, right? That's stupid. It's like, it's ice cream. Why do I do that? To be dumb. That's what we're thinking, but he's stepping out of his bubble to be like, I want to engage my wife and help her to stretch a bit, something fairly easy. That's where then you have to come out of your bubble and you guys come closer, to start moving closer together on that. Yeah. So I do think that is a good approach, Brandon. And then Molly, understanding that that's what's happening. Right. So that you're also doing your growth steps towards, okay, when he brings up something for next weekend, Wednesday before, I'm going to think through, what does that look like? So number one, right, kids, what are we going to be doing, schedule? Those are kind of going to be some ABCs of that. So he's already going to think through that.
I think that's the huge part, is like, can you think through that before you ask me?
Well, but don't assume
that he hasn't. Right.
Don't assume that he hasn't. So already say, can you give me your thoughts on what this would look like?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's a good question, Bob, for when Teresa wants to go to the lake. Help me understand what that looks like.
Right.
That's a good question.
Where are we going?
No, not.
So I have a question on this for Molly and Bob. Is there any difference between, like, Brandon saying do you want to go get ice cream in 5-10 minutes, whatever? Is there any difference when something's done truly spontaneously with no warning? Like if Brandon's driving down the road and he just simply pulls into the ice cream place and says we're getting ice cream, like, is there a different reaction there? Like, better or worse? Like,
Wait, a different reaction versus what? If
how would you react
without asking you 5 minutes beforehand about doing it?
We're already there. That's good with me.
Look,
we're out.
I'm just wondering if being forced to think about it ahead of time, like a little bit of anxiety, having to think about it before it actually is happening, is like part of the issue. And if you're actually just showing up there and getting ice cream, then it's like, well, it's almost like, thank you for not even bringing this into my brain to think about.
Right.
We're here, let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, but if he like packed a bag and was like, we're leaving on vacation right now, hop in the car.
No. I think something little and like clearly this is risk-free stopping to get ice cream. You know what I mean? Like something very little like that.
But if you guys haven't established that previously, in his mind, that isn't, because it seemed to, in their mind, they might be like, you bring up an objection about everything. So how do I even know where to start with what needs?
That's true.
Yeah, that's a real frustration.
That's true.
Needs time versus, I think, and this is probably to answer your question a little bit more, Brad, too, is until you kind of establish that rhythm with them, you don't know what to not give time for them to process on what situation, because it could be up in the air.
That's true.
Oh, and to answer, like, one of the things that help us is, like, he is a gearhead. So if we wrapped ice cream around hitting up a place where they had a car show, big difference, because his comfort level was being around cars. Or if we were with, okay, so if we came to see one of you guys and we're going to have ice cream versus just going somewhere else strange to the same ice cream stand, it would be different if we knew that, like, for him to meet up with people that he knew. Do you know what I mean? Like at the end, rather than it just being a thing.
You included a familiar area.
Yeah, that's it exactly.
For them.
Yep.
Yes.
And that made a difference because it took the focus off of necessarily all the tasks, even though they still had to be done. You knew, oh, like, you know, I can't wait to see like the old cars or, you know, the friends, you know, or whatever it is. It just kind of took your mind off of it, so to speak.
No,
the scare out of it.
Right.
I don't know if that would make a difference for you, but that's how we've danced with it.
Yeah, the positive outweighed the negative.
Yeah.
So
I had to endure a car show, but whatever.
The fumes of the car show.
But I did get better at it, and we've come to where we have some common interests. You know, like even if it's not my thing, it's palatable for me. You know, because I get my satisfaction of being able to get out. You know, so and talk to people. I talk to the cars. So
talk to the people in the cars.
Yeah. So
the ladies.
Yeah, I can talk to anything. So
when do you guys feel your most authentic self?
Did we do the confusing, frustrating one?
Well, they were kind of talking through. I didn't ask all of them because they were ended up talking through some of that.
Overlap. Yeah.
It overlapped a little bit. But it sounds like she wants to know what that is specifically. Molly, what frustrates you or frustrates others about?
I kind of to get like some insight from Brandon. I think it's the people find it frustrating or confusing, like when you're not willing to move forward into something. Like what are you hesitating about? You know what I mean? And really all that is like there's not an understanding between the two of you, you know? So
I voiced that earlier to her, and I voiced it earlier in here. It's just the frustration of seeing that she may not be able to enjoy. And because of that, now that we have a family, that those girls same way can't enjoy something. And that's a responsibility on my part as well to make sure that we can do that by, enabling Molly to be able to do that. But she has to enable herself, but I need to create the platform where she can do that, not create a platform where there's nothing but rejection of her feelings.
Well, and the thing with the 6 too, like they're searching for like that piece of what's the word? Like a trusted authority figure. So like when they have a trusted authority figure, like they'll do anything. You know what I mean? Like
So basically, Brandon, you have to come into all of your 8-ness.
Yeah.
I mean, no, seriously. I mean, I say that facetiously, but I mean, I'm being I mean, seriously, that's essentially what she's looking for, is for you to be like a straight up 8, a healthy 8.
Yeah.
That casts vision and says, this is what we're going to do. This is what this is supposed to look like. I've already thought about all that. Here's what it is. Think Dwayne. Be more like Dwayne.
I will. I'll call him. Be like, how do you do what you do?
Well, I don't want him to be nicer though. So that's why I said you have to, there's a fine line.
Nope, I'm done.
Hey, Brandon, you know what we did? Like, Bob's a lot better, like, in functioning in this than when we first got married. I will tell you, it's a huge difference. But remember one year we sat down and actually came up with fun activities that were within driving distance. And it served as like a bucket list. So he got familiar with things so that I could spring something on him and say, hey, but he had been looking at the list of 20 things that we could do all summer, that it wasn't so unfamiliar because he just kept looking at it. Do you know what I mean? So you could come home one day and say, hey, do you want to go down to that like putt-putt course we've been talking about? Oh, okay. Because he had digested it a bit. You know what I mean?
Great. That's a awesome. That's a really, really, really good practical.
Yeah, that's good.
That is really good.
Molly, what I heard you saying when you said that like trusted authority figure and then you'll do anything, is that basically you're saying I can trust you and you've alleviated the weight. Like when you talked about the weight, like I know the weight is alleviated so I can move forward because it's being carried. I'm not the only one that has to carry it.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And we told her what to do and she said, okay.
Only because she knows it's being carried.
Do it. Let's go. Okay.
That was great.
But I would encourage you, like, especially like now, like we realized how much we never explored the area, that we had so much fun finding like little shops, little things, and it just became just a fun thing that we did, which reminds me, we probably should do that again. It was just kind of interesting, and it kept it exciting. So I got my fix of like feeling like I was going somewhere, and I was, and we were both experiencing something for the first time together. It wasn't like I had been there. It was just kind of a neat thing, you know, because that was probably our biggest growth spurt, you know, for him, getting out of that.
Yeah, that is a great idea. Yeah.
I'll do that.
And you've decided on those things together too. So that's, that's awesome.
And we would take the most circuitous route. The whole idea was to go to the unfamiliar, you know, and when you do something together that's unfamiliar is when you kind of bond together. You know what I mean? Because we had to work together as a team, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of, when you guys feel most authentic and where you can kind of let your guard down and be yourself, is when you have a trusted partner doing things with you, alongside you.
Yeah.
Feel like someone's come alongside.
Yeah.
And you didn't have to ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Brandon, don't use GPS. Let Molly use the map for a little bit. That could be really fun.
Actually, when we moved, we
like absolutely not.
drove across the country. We moved to Arizona and we used a map the entire way.
Yeah.
7 then though.
She was a 7 then, when she was like, sure, I don't care, let's get lost.
Yeah. Party.
Party time.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing about yourselves specifically. So here's where, again, I leave this in here for you to reflect on later, and I'll email this out to you. There is some more spiritual deep diving you can do that I've given in here that you'll be able to help take some of those next steps into deep transformation and growth transformation. And Molly's mentioned it several times. The virtue of the six is courage. In John 16:33 says, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. So through all of life's trials, you'll never find lasting hope in your own plans and strength. And that's why the hypervigilance to plan and take yourself through that process will never be enough. So the courage you need only comes through faith in God, because he's the one that has overcome the world. So therefore, be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. For that ice cream, for that trip next weekend to the lake, canoeing, it doesn't matter, because I know God is with me. And if I truly believe that and stand on that, just because my partner or someone didn't think through all the details doesn't mean that it's all going to go to hell in a handbasket. So God is the one that protects us and goes before us and gives his angels charge over us.
Amen.
So remembering that, you will be just fine.
I want to know what happened with the canoe. What's the story behind a canoe? Who had the experience?
There's no canoe. Joni made that up.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if there was some kind of backstory. I'm like, oh my goodness, I missed something.
No canoe.
Okay.
I made that up. So just to follow up on some things as we close out, Bob, how was your boss, and understanding more about him, and how did those interactions change, not change? Did you start to view him differently? What does that look like for you?
It's doing better. My immediate boss, I'm finding he's more easygoing than I thought he was.
Mm-hmm.
And the other boss is still
Intense.
very intense. I don't think he's going to change, just the way he is.
Okay.
And I think he has to be in the position that he is right now. He's like number 2 in charge, so he has to make sure all the reins are tight and everything has to be done his way.
Okay.
And so that's the way he'll get it.
Well, we'll continue praying for him for sure.
Yeah.
Teresa, how's your mom?
She has good days and bad days. It's trending upwards, so that's good.
Okay.
You know, it gets disconcerting, and that's where my trust has to come in. You know, so yeah. And I saw Eli and Logan. Eli is the one with the brain tumor that they successfully removed it, but he's having extraordinary amounts of pain, and so that's still not dissipating. But I guess that's common in rehab. But for an 8-year-old, it's hard to explain to an 8-year-old. You know.
Dwayne is still experiencing some of that too, especially on rainy days.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But he's also tired of going back to the doctor back and forth and having them operate too. So
Okay.
just be praying for him too, because he's not saying much to people about that, but I know that that's still an issue for him. He gets headaches and stuff, and they're debilitating. So.
Oh.
Can't get out of bed.
Yeah.
But he's also they're not able to give him clear understanding on what needs to happen either.
Mm-hmm.
Besides going back in and having surgery again. So.
What was his underlying condition? What was the reason for his first surgery?
The first reason is because it was fluid in his ear, but he was having trouble hearing. But he's in the military for 30 years, but also he's been in several motorcycle accidents.
Oh, okay.
But they went in to, drain the fluid and everything of that nature, in his brain somewhere behind over here. But then he still had like swelling and things weren't getting better. So he had another one last year. But he's still having headaches and stuff. So, so it's still not fully restored. So,
okay,
praying for that. Did your mom find out any more information around getting her stuff covered and managed through her own network?
Yes, all ended up good.
Yeah.
So she's actually been doing pre-operative testing and everything, and her surgery is scheduled to be this coming Thursday.
Okay.
So we definitely need prayers over that, especially because I think her anxiety is increasing about it because she also has a blood clot disorder that makes surgery a lot more tricky.
Okay.
So she's starting to feel a little anxious there. So prayers over that, and then just the speedy recovery, and that she feels good in the hospital, because she's not allowed to have anyone with her, which can be hard, having to do that alone the 1 or 2 nights whenever she has to be there. So just prayers over peace and quick healing and all that.
Is your mom a Christian?
Yes.
Is she? Okay.
Yeah. I told her, I was like, we need to have some scripture. There's like a little book for you to immediately go to, because she told me the other night, she was like, I was up all night. I'm just like starting to get really anxious about this. And that was one thing that I did before all my surgeries. I had a flip book of all the scriptures I was going to cling to, that as soon as my mind went to a certain spot, just either reading that myself or having someone else even read it over me if I couldn't.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hey, Joni, did you, are you still looking for a house? Did you have any luck searching, or do we put that on the list? Well, we're keeping you here in Pittsburgh, but that's on our list.
We're still looking. So
Okay.
we'll see what happens. We're giving ourselves a year to make that decision.
Okay, so you don't have to rush out of there. I didn't know when your lease was up.
It's in May, next May. So.
Oh, okay.
We just so. Okay, well, awesome sauce.
Molly and Bob, out of all the numbers, like you guys' number, I'm intrigued by it. So I'm going to keep digging into this. Like I know I live with an 8, but
I need you to dig into your own number.
You guys, like so I don't know what is it.
It's called enviousness of a 4 and wanting to have what other people have. But he know that if he actually studied.
He said intrigued. He said envious. He said intrigued.
Yes, thank you.
He said envious when he was not on camera earlier.
Oh, okay.
Just recognizing that we're the best number.
Now I be getting over on y'all. Y'all don't let it.
Joni, Brad, did you hear what Brad said?
Say, I saw fingers, but I didn't see what you said.
I just said I feel like John says that every week.
He does. He does. Because fours are envious and they want what other people have. That's true. That's it about your number.
What did you say, Mom?
Molly said it's just because they're the best number.
Oh.
I kind of agree.
I'm offended.
I'm offended.
I'm also offended.
I kind of agree.
Except, no, I don't care. I don't care.
I want to be spooky.
Speaking of Dwayne, did you see there was a shooting in San Antonio?
Yeah, I saw that.
When?
I guess last night there was 8 people shot in a bar.
Oh, I didn't know that. I hadn't heard.
It just popped up on my phone, actually. So.
Yeah.
Well, I want to read this and then we'll wrap it. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, this is the way you shall bless the children of Israel. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Pray the blessing over all of you this week, over your parents, over all the things that are happening in the country. Continue to be praying. I'll be having prayer again. I need to probably just find a regular date and time so I can.
I was last night.
Good. Me and Teresa. Good conversation. And good worship.
Yep.
I need to do that one day. That Molly on that.
Yeah.
Sounding like an echo.
Yeah.
What number's next week?
Dos.
Okay.
Dos. So,
real good. Thank you.
Continue walking yourselves through deep diving your own number, and your spouse is right. Looking around the preconceived notions, biases you might have, why or why not, being more intentional around that, capturing what you're learning, writing down and journaling any aha moments, writing down your own, again, when you somatically, when you feel it in your body, having these activations and triggers, stop and notice what's happening around you. What caused you to go there? What was it? Some words people said? Was it feelings that were, put into place? Just paying attention to that. And then again, being specific around doing things with your spouse that each other likes to do. So being uncomfortable and doing things they like to do. So I have been doing that. Exactly. So doing things that, so at a minimum, you should be doing like 2 things a week, right? One thing that I enjoy and one thing my spouse enjoys. And spending time together. So being intentional.
Squeak.
Playing with squeaky toys.
Squeaky toys.
Y'all see this shenanigan?
I didn't know.
This is the shenaniganery that I have to deal with.
Stacey, what are you cooking?
Stacey, you're cooking up a storm.
I just threw a whole bunch of stuff together. It was just like leftover steak and some chicken. I made a salad, and then there was some chili and some rice, and I just put chili over rice for whoever wanted that. That's how I cook. I make a whole bunch of meat a couple days, and we just cut it up and put it on stuff.
Nope.
Bye, Brandon.
Bye.
No, I'm saying I'll take it.
Oh, you're saying I want some.
He wants to
Cut it up.
Dan
It's
doesn't look like I'll eat it.
I know. That's what I'm thinking. I'm
It was
like,
our anniversary meat. I grilled a whole bunch of steak and chicken, and then
anniversary meat.
I want some meat.
still eating more food. All he does is eat.
More protein.
I've noticed you've been eating for a while over there, Dan.
That's all he does.
Really good.
Every-
I don't know how you guys haven't been eating.
Did you see the ice cream and food like an hour ago?
I don't know how you guys have it. That's hilarious.
We're getting ready to drive to Zanesville to go pick up Alondro for a couple weeks. So
Oh, nice.
Ah, okay.
Pick up a what?
keep me on the prayer list.
Really?
John's
John's son.
Oh. How old is he?
Grown.
17.
He's 18.
He'll be 18 in December.
18.
Close enough.
So it's going to be a blast. You'll have a great time, make some memories, do some memorable things.
That's right.
It's going to be great.
That's right.
Right.
You have to listen to what Pastor Stacy's saying. Take that advice. So.
Go in with positive attitude.
Everybody,
John and his son are like twins. Stace. Just wait till you see him.
he does look like
Oh, really?
he really does now that he's older. Really looks just like John.
And since John doesn't age,
Yeah, I know.
I
Yeah.
don't know what he is.
Does he fall asleep as easily?
No,
does he in our
me and Alondro talk about John all the time.
He understands her for some reason. I want to know what.
What number is he?
I don't know.
I think he's a 5.
You think so?
Oh.
Those are the best.
These are the best.
That's why he understands you, maybe.
Bob's feeling kind of like a misfit. He didn't bring his ball cap
Yeah,
down today.
I'll dig it out.
Doggone it.
I'll dig
All
it
the
out.
guys have their ball caps on.
It's my marriage on purpose.
Yeah. What is it?
So on purpose.
Oh, I couldn't see it. Okay. Oh.
Well, have a good trip, guys. Enjoy your time.
Yeah.
Are you up there or driving there and back?
We're meeting my mom in Zanesville.
Okay.
Brandon, is it
Yellow
okay? Brandon, is it okay? You got the okay?
No, she left before I could ask her.
Oh,
Guys, call it.
She didn't say anything, so now I gotta let her process it.
okay. I'm sorry.
Molly, what do you think? You going or no?
Going where?
I don't
Next
know.
weekend.
Molly.
Next week. Are you going next week, Mal?
No.
Radio silence.
Radio.
She has it on mute, so she may either be ignoring us or doesn't realize it's on mute.
She might be driving and doesn't want to click the button as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she has to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pulling.
She's thinking about if I touch it, I might crash and then I might hurt other people. And so she's thinking about stuff like, if I look down, it's going to be dramatic.
But it's very smart to not push a button while you'll be unsafe.
Hey,
Push
I'm
the
trying to
button.
tell you.
Push your button.
That is very smart.
Push your button.
So, Molly, be safe. It's good.
Hey, that's good, Molly. That's right.
We need to put a GoPro on Molly, and then Joni will be speaking in her ear. No, listen to what Brandon said. You can stop and have something to eat.
Yes, it's okay. I promise.
Yeah, exactly.
It does.
Or our whole group, we could just watch you guys next weekend.
Listen,
If that was good or not.
I told Jana we're gonna start traveling around with a camera and start our reality show.
Awesome.
Wow, it's going to be good.
Life with Team
Shoulder
JJ.
cams.
I'd
Life
watch it.
with Team JJ.
I'm sure you
Yeah.
will. It's going to be.
It's gonna be a mess.
Oh my God.
I liked watching you shop with your mom. That was good.
That's what my friend, she sent me a message the other day and was like, "We need more of you and your mom videos."
Oh my gosh.
Amazing.
Yeah.
All right. This is really good, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, that's great.
Fun
Yeah.
times. I'll see you guys later. Have a good day. Good
Okay,
weekend.
a good
thanks,
week.
guys. Have a good week.
Yeah.
See you.
Later.
All right. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.